We'll call the meeting to order, and the Reverend Don Reichert will lead us in the invocation, and if you'll remain standing, I'll lead you in the pledge. Thank you.
Let us pray. Though it's not quite Thanksgiving Day, yet every time we pray, Lord, we come with thanks and praise. We give you great thanks that we have such personal prosperity and such abundance in our lives, O Lord. Yet we are mindful that there are those with whom we share this county who struggle for the basics in life, and so we remember them in prayer as well. We thank you that there are such wonderful natural and human resources in our county, and we are mindful of how much good can come out of them, and how, whether it does or not, often rests in the hands of these, your county commissioners. And so we pray for them today, that they will be wise and discerning as they listen and make decisions on behalf of all of us. And when the day is done, O God, may the labors of these hours be pleasing in your sight and blessed with your favor. And to you we will continue to give all the thanks and praise. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now turn the meeting over to our county attorney, Mr. Collins, to conduct the election of the chairman and vice chairman. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Last year, the board reorganized its time to elect the chairman from January to November. So at this time, I'd like to open the nominations for chairman.
Mr. Collins, I nominate Commissioner Bowden as chair.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to our new chairman, Chairman Bowden, for the election of the vice chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, I thank you very much for your vote of confidence. I will do my very best for Indian River County.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, if I could, before we move on, I would certainly like to thank Commissioner Wheeler for his service and his statesmanship in the meetings. It was I'll say more of a tradition than it is ordinance or policy to basically be flexible. It started, I believe, back with Commissioner Lowther, and to allow the citizen input if we had more than 3 minutes and still on point, still talking about business. Commissioner Wheeler allowed that to continue and has certainly done an exceptional job as chairman, and I wanted to compliment him on that and thank him for that year of service.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And we will accept nominations for vice chairman, and I wish to nominate Commissioner Wesley Davis.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Congratulations. Well, that was easy. Any additions or deletions from this agenda?
Madam Chair, we have a correction.
Okay.
Item 10A, I believe.
And 1080, is that?
Item 10C, and that's just the date change for the people that have a agenda that hasn't been changed. It says the public hearing notice for November 20th, and it's actually...
Is that 9C?
That's 9C.
9C, I'm sorry. And
Okay.
that's December 4th instead of November 20th is the only correction.
Thank you for identifying that correction, 9C.
Madam Chair, I would like to add an item to the agenda, 13EI, just be a brief update on the timing of the appeal of the St. John's final order.
All right, and that'll be under your matters?
Yes, ma'am.
And I have one that I'd like to add too, and that's for a couple of reasons, but the mining and on-site extraction activity what we discussed at a meeting a few meetings ago,
And that'll be under your matters,
under my matters.
which is,
Let's see.
Item 13A.
13A.
yes.
Madam Chairman, also we have a typographical error on item 7L. It says 9th Street when it should say 8th Street on the agenda. If you could make that change, please.
Thank you very much. And I think we also have an update on some maps, 7K and 7L.
So much for things going smoothly.
But we're handling them.
We are.
You're doing a bang-up job there,
Thank you
Madam
very
Chair.
much. Mr. Fletcher, anything you'd like to add or take off?
No, y'all added enough.
Okay.
Y'all in there.
I also would like to add under my matters a plaque we have received from the Resource Association, and just to identify that. So that'll go under my matters.
I'll move that we make the aforementioned changes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. We have a presentation, a proclamation designating November 18th to 24th, 2007 as Christian Heritage Week in Indian River County. Commissioner Wheeler, please.
Thank you. This is a proclamation designating November 18th through the 24th, 2007 as Christian Heritage Week in Indian River County. Whereas during this season and in the spirit of Thanksgiving, it is right and just to recognize the contributions and sacrifices of our forefathers. And whereas the preamble of the Constitution of the State of Florida provides, we the people of the State of Florida, being grateful to Almighty God for our constitutional liberties and in order to secure its benefits, perfect our government, ensure domestic tranquility and maintain public order, and guarantee equal civil and political rights to all. And whereas the Constitution of the State of Florida guarantees the free exercise of religion, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of November 18th through the 24th, 2007 be known, designated, and set aside as Christian Heritage Week in Indian River County in recognition of the American Family Association's contribution to the quality of life in Indian River County. And that's adopted this day, 20th of November, 2007, and signed by all commissioners. Mr. Johnson?
County Commissioners, on behalf of the members of the American Family Association, we thank you for this proclamation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. B, presentation by Nancy Wood, Indian River Green Team, of the donation of $4,500 for the application to the Florida Green Building Coalition, Inc., for certification of Indian River County as a certified Florida Green local government. Nancy?
Good morning. It's a wonderful morning in Indian River County. We're so pleased to be here, the Indian River Green Team, and we have this nice, big, fat, juicy check for you for $4,000 to help pay the entire fee for the accreditation for Indian River County. We've already given you $500 for the application fee, and we'd like to give you this large check with much pride and with much joy. And I'd like to give this to you, and I'd also like to just mention very quickly, I know you have a lot on your agenda today, I wanted to thank personally Gary Wheeler one more time for being the first to step up to the plate and giving me $100 towards this great thing that we're all doing as a community, and also Peter O'Brien for spearheading it, and to Sandra Bowden for showing up at some beach cleanups that we're having. As I've seen Peter there as well, and I'm sure Wesley, I'll be seeing you and Mr. Fletcher. And I didn't mean that in a bad way.
No, I didn't take it wrong.
I'll tell you what, the next beach cleanup, mark your calendar, is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. It's going to be at Wabasso Beach from 9 to 11 a.m., and we'll have bags, gloves, and cold water for everybody there. So you can make it up there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. I just wanted to mention, especially, we had one very large donor who gave us the entire balance of what we needed, and his name was Peter Pleinneck, and he declined to come today because he's not too into everybody watching him. But he owns the Mythic Paint Company, which is the only company that has non-toxic paints. And he's just moving here from up north and starting his business down here. And if it wasn't for him, boy, we'd be in trouble. I also wanted to let you know that more history has been made this past weekend at the Vero Beach Boat Show. Was the first event in the county to have recycling besides our Earth Day that we always do. They asked us if we would recycle for them, and we were happy to do so. And we invite anyone in the community in the future if they'd like us to do recycling at their events as well. Also, the City of Vero Beach is now interested in becoming accredited, as well as I spoke with Andrew Coy and Sebastian, that they want their city to be accredited as well. This would mean, if we could do that, and I know we can because we have such a wonderful community and so much support, that we would be the leader in the state. We would be the leader in the state in green environmental issues if we would do this. So I'm looking forward to working with that. And I just wanted to say that thank you to everybody. Our community has become very active, a very active participant in our future. We have a wonderful community here. As she mentioned earlier, we have a lot to be thankful for. And it is pretty much up to you guys, and I really appreciate all that you've done. And it is with great joy that we give you all this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Would you like to introduce your cohorts here?
Yes, this is Barbara Brooks. She is a co-founder, and Eva Rocco in her Go Green button. She's also a co-founder. And our new board member is Dawn Chicano. She is a teacher at the Charter High School and has got a lot of the kids involved in it. And behind me is my daytime boss, Dr. Harold Brooks, who gave us the seed money with Global Renewable Energy to start the Indian River Green Team to begin with. So we're all here. We're very happy, and we're recycling at Oslo School. We're getting the cities together. We're getting the communities together and the counties. Glad to see you're not drinking out of styrofoam cups. You got some mugs. Jeez. Everything is looking good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Green mug.
Give it to the chair. Yeah, the chair gets the checks.
Commissioner, I've got your coffee here.
I believe I have my mug.
Oh, you said double-fisted drinker this morning, I see.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, if I could, I'd like to congratulate Nancy. As you can see, she went out and even with her hand and pounded the pavement. And we certainly do appreciate your work, really, in bringing this forward. Looking forward to the great things that it can do.
We have just begun.
Absolutely.
And I know she's just begun. I have worked with Nancy before when I was with the city, and let me tell you, she is a go-getter.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Approval of minutes, there are none. Consent agenda, would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull R.
R. I would like to postpone M, please, if that would be okay with us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to pull that. I forgot.
I'd like to pull R as well.
R. And we're going to postpone M. Any others? May I have a motion?
Move as amended or second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Mr. Wheeler?
Yeah, I was just curious as to why we were replacing Mr. Bruce. This makes the second time that he's been replaced, and you know, I'm just curious as to why, whether he resigned or what the reasons were. There wasn't any explanation as to that in the backup material.
Well, Commissioner Wheeler, I can understand your concern, and I do appreciate your inquiry on that. You are setting precedents by inquiring an explanation as to an appointment by a commissioner. But most certainly, I want to give you the timeline so that you can better understand how this all occurred. There is no agenda to this matter other than a prudent decision. As you all may recall, Bob Bruce was appointed by Commissioner Art Newberger, and just about 2 months prior to my election, Art Newberger had requested, I believe, the resignation of Bob Bruce. And during that conversation, Bob Bruce told me, he said he honored that request. And, well, right before my election, Bob Bruce did discuss it with me, and he said that he really enjoyed serving and wanted to serve. And I'm sure you can appreciate being newly elected, there are a lot of decisions to make and a lot of commitments to absorb. And one of them would have been an appointment to the P&Z. And quite frankly, I had not had the time to choose or carefully select my appointment for the P&Z position. Bob then spoke to me once again, and he said, I sure really miss that. And I said, you know, this is a win-win. I watched Bob Bruce as I was a candidate seeking office. I watched him in the chambers, and I believe he was doing a very good job. And it kind of alleviated the search mechanism to have to select another appointee, and most certainly he had the desire and the commitment. And I talked to Bob Bruce, and I said, I'll be happy to change that, because quite frankly, I did not know the new appointee, and I did not want my signature on that new appointee. After all, a commissioner has the obligation to choose an appointee. Such being the case, I righted that. I did not feel it was the best decision to remove him from office if he was working in that position, in a volunteer position, carving the future of Indian River County, and I reversed it. Such being the case, I now have had some time to look at the future of Indian River County, and there were busy times where we did not have the opportunity to be looking at committee members or commission members for the selection process. But I did have that time, and I selected someone who I believe has had years of experience. I know he has had years of experience in the P&Z process, and as well as a lot of commitment and long understanding with the trade of decision making. He's an educator of 33 years, retired. He served at the P&Z at Indian River Shores, and I discussed it, the possibility with him, and Mr. Walk is he's in the room here, and I'd also like to take the opportunity to introduce him to the community. I'm sure many of you know him, but I would like to have him come up to the microphone and introduce himself as well. When I discussed this with Mr. Bruce last week, I said, Bob, I'm very pleased with what you've done, but I believe that as a commissioner, I need to make my appointment, and I believe I've narrowed the selection down. And Bob's response was, well, if I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told Commissioner Art Newberger when he had a similar conversation. You've made a decision. Good luck to the next guy. And I said, well, Bob, there's no time frame on my decision. And quite frankly, if Bob had said he wanted to stay on until January, I would have no reservations about Bob staying on until January. He did not ask for that opportunity, and he clearly stated that good luck to the next guy. Coincidentally, the next morning there was a resignation on my desk that he had emailed to the office. I believe he had emailed many people on P&Z and other people in the community. But that's the explanation. I made a decision. I had the time to make the decision, and I believe we have the best candidate for my appointment. Gerald, you want to come up to the podium?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gerard White. I've been a resident of Indian River Shores for 10 years. I've owned property prior to that. On the Planning and Zoning Board of Indian River Shores for 7 or 8 years, been chairman for the past 8 years. I enjoyed doing it. I was asked if I was interested in moving on up to the planning and zoning of the county, and I says I'd be interested, yes. And here I am. If you have any questions, I'd be more than pleased to answer them. I certainly don't want to cause any controversy or trouble.
Well, wait a minute, it's too late for that.
Late for that is right. And people are wishing me luck. I'm not sure I know what I'm getting into.
Get used to it, yeah.
But, you know, I have no hidden agenda. I made a lot of friends, a lot of enemies in the Indian River Shores, and I try to be as objective as I can. All I can tell you, if anything else, you have questions, just please let me know.
I don't believe there was controversy. I believe Commissioner Wheeler just wanted due explanation as to the timeliness of the selection process. Am I correct, Commissioner Wheeler?
Correct. This is absolutely no reflection on you at all, Mr. White. In fact, I've talked to a couple of people that know you well, and they sung your praises and accolades. And so this is not a reflection on you at all. The concern I have is, as Commissioner Fleischer stated, that I was setting a precedent by asking this question. But in fact, the precedent has been set in the last year by this happening, or the last 2 years by this happening. And as far as I don't know that it's ever happened in the history of the county before. And my concern has absolutely nothing to do with your ability or sincerity. It just has to do with the fact that from my perspective as one commissioner, I think you should pick people in general to serve on these boards that you believe had character and integrity, and I think Mr. Bruce has that. And I believe you do too, from what I understand from people that know you much better than I do. But the bottom line is I get concerned about wanting to appoint people to these boards that would do our bidding rather than be free-thinking and give us advice based on their perspective. And then, of course, we weigh that as a commission. And I think the more input we get and the more discussion and the more debate we have is a positive in our system of government, which is the best in the world. And so I just had concerns because this is the third time this has happened in the last couple of years, and it's a new precedent, as a matter of fact, instead of the precedent of asking why. And but that's where I'm at. Mr. Bruce has given of his time freely, and this has happened to him twice. And I know that I talked to Mr. Bruce too, and he was upset about this, and not angry, but disappointed and upset because it's kind of a lack of confidence in somebody that, and you know what it's like to give freely of your time, and then instead of being thanked.
I can understand your point, and his completely. And
it's I
want to be in the middle of a controversy. No.
Right, and that's not my intention. I hope you accept that. That's not my intention at all.
Commissioner Will?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I had a couple concerns of this appointment, too, and one of them was taking people off in the middle of their term. I think P&Z, we need people there that, one, they do a lot of backup work, and they put a lot of time and effort into learning the court ordinances and zoning regulations, and they've committed a lot of time and effort to getting up to speed and being educated to make knowledgeable decisions. And I think they need the autonomy of being able to make those decisions without a political axe hanging over their head that they may get yanked out in midterm. And I think it just sets a bad precedent that we keep pulling people out. And when Mr. Christopher was pulled off the board, his efforts were described as irreplaceable. And now we have another P&Z commissioner who's been described as doing a very good job, has an excellent attendance record, can't really point to any type of discrepancy that might give you good cause to replace him. And so I think this is a policy we need to start saying, if we're going to take the time and effort to have these folks commit to be on these committees, that they should be allowed to serve out their term and not subject to a political whim here and there. My second big concern is the timing of this appointment. I think there's a cloud of uncertainty over this appointment. And coming before P&Z next month, right off the bat, is a controversial mining application. Mr. Paladin has publicly stated that he's a consultant for this mine operation, the Wild Turkey mine operation. And it's a well-known fact that Mr. Paladin is a very close friend of Commissioner Fleischer. And I believe, not saying that there's any wrongdoing going on here, I just think it adds an air of uncertainty about the influence of certain individuals on this commission. And I would like to see And certainly Commissioner Fleischer, if he feels Mr. Bruce has not done the correct job and wants to make an appointment, that's fine. But I would like to see it done after the wild turkey mining application has run its course, and not a change on the P&Z 3 weeks before that comes before us. I just think it doesn't send a good message to the community, doesn't send a good message to the voters, and I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that people will look at things like that and we'll all get painted with that same brush. So I would like to see either this pulled or tabled until January.
Madam Chairman?
We do have a policy here that we've pretty much, since I've been on the commission, that we do not have applause. This is a business meeting, and I would appreciate it if you would kindly refrain from applauding or booing. Commissioner Fleischer, yes.
First, a couple of points were just made that appointments were changed. There is no changing of appointment. I reappointed Bob Bruce. He had asked to be reappointed. I knew of no other choice. It is 10 months later, folks. I've made the appropriate choice. I believe for the future of Indian River County. This man has worked hard in P&Z. He's knowledgeable. He's very objective. I've looked at his voting record. I've looked at Mr. Bruce's voting record. I want you to know, in Bob Bruce's tenure, I have never called him to discuss any matter that he has decided on P&Z in any way, shape, or form. I have never spoken to Bob Bruce and encouraged him to do anything other than what he should have done in serving the community in an objective fashion. And I anticipate that to be the same strong character traits that we are now appointing and will be appointing in Mr. Wolk. I believe that he is that element of objectivity, and I found no negativity about Mr. Bruce. And I want to ensure that I thanked him for his service. I offered him any other committee appointments, and he said the only one he wanted would be interested in would be the appointment to the Land Acquisition Committee. Unfortunately, he did advise that his spouse is on that committee, and it would be a conflict. But he is eligible to serve in any other capacity. Again, I did not give Mr. Bruce a timeline. When I discussed this with Mr. Bruce, he said, "You've made the phone call," and that was it. He had a resignation on my desk the next day. I don't feel it's appropriate to have negativity enshrouded about this young man's appointment. And I think that is precedent-setting because I only reappointed Bob Bruce. He was not my natural choice. He was a good choice, and I reinstated his position as I felt it was appropriate at the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Just
you.
for the record from our attorney, does the Planning and Zoning Committee members serve at the pleasure of the commissioners?
They do, but the ordinance also states that each commissioner shall appoint one member from their own district, and I think that's the right of each commissioner to make the one appointment. There are two at-large positions, and there's frequently been discussion and votes on a number of candidates for at-large positions, but Mr. Fleischer has the right under the code to make an appointment.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion?
And I guess really, Mr. Collins, let's suppose we vote this down. Then what?
I don't think you have the authority to vote it down.
Okay.
The ordinance is clear that each commissioner shall appoint one member. That's each commissioner's appointment, not the full commission's appointment. And I think the purpose is to have representation from each district with someone that the commissioner knows and has confidence in.
Thank you, and I wanted that stated for the record.
Thank you.
Do you interpret it different?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but it's a little kind of alluded in the standpoint that says all appointments were made the first meeting of the board in January, et cetera. And then later on it says members shall serve at the pleasure of the county commission, not commissioner. And then it says each county commissioner shall appoint one member who must reside in the commission's district. And then it goes on to talk about the members at large. But I would think that one member would make an appointment, but I would think that the commission would have the right to approve or not approve that appointment. But again, I'm not a lawyer. Will Collins is a lawyer.
And I guess I'll kind of weigh in on this. Quite frankly, my P&Z appointee, I have taken some heat, and as far as the decisions that have been made from some people in the community agreeing or disagreeing. But I guess really where I'm going to fall on this issue is that it is the commissioner's responsibility to appoint somebody from their district, and I'm going to be in favor of that commissioner's decision whether I agree with the appointment or not. And I'll go back to Commissioner Bowden's decision of appointments. Quite frankly, Commissioner O'Brien, I don't even know who your appointee is, and it really doesn't matter. But because you have selected that individual, and because of the respect that I have for the office that you hold as a commissioner and your decision to appoint, I've got to respect that decision as my equal.
Commissioner Davis, I believe you've raised an interesting point. Commissioner O'Brien, when was your appointment for the P&Z?
When I took office, Scott Chisholm was the current appointee for District 4. Mr. Chisholm fulfilled his term, which expired in January of '07, and at that time I appointed Mr. Greg Smith to fill the expired term.
And you placed that on the consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
And it was not questioned because that was your choice, your appointment?
Well, I think it wasn't questioned because one term had expired, and I was letting the term expire. I wasn't chopping them up in the middle of the term. And I don't believe they were, I don't have any problem with the individual. I just really question the timing of this. I question the fact that we keep changing these in midterm.
I didn't place the timing mechanism in there. I had a discussion, and Mr. Bruce actually placed the timing mechanism on that. I just want for the record, and there was one other P&Z change midstream as well, and I think that it's the commissioner's right to do that, and I stand
Does
by
anybody
that
have
decision. Thank you.
Exception that they don't agree with our attorney?
Well, I guess my question is, why is it on the consent agenda if our vote doesn't matter?
Yeah.
The appointment has to be made somehow, and it has to be reflected in the minutes of the commission.
Yeah.
And that's you.
The consent agenda is a voting agenda.
Yes, it is, but you have to read the code so it makes sense in itself. The removal provision says members shall serve at the pleasure of the county commission. If each commissioner shall appoint one member, then it's at the pleasure of that appointing commissioner for the district appointee, and it's at the pleasure of the full commission for those that are at large.
What I read, though, Will, simply says removal. And it says members shall serve at the pleasure of the county commission, not county commissioner.
And the way I read that, taken together with a phrase that says each county commissioner shall appoint one member who must reside in that commissioner's district, is that, as I just said, it's at the pleasure of the appointing commissioner for that district appointee, and it's at the pleasure of the full commission for the at-large.
I would also, as Commissioner Davis states, would agree with our attorney because he is our attorney and he's interpreted this. So I would call for a motion at this point.
Yeah. And do we have a motion on this, Madam Chair?
No, I'm calling for a motion.
I move to approve item R.
May I have a second?
No second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-2 with Commissioner Wheeler and Commissioner O'Brien opposing.
May I I'd like to say one thing, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. White, please accept my apology for you being in the middle of this here, and I appreciate your service in Indian River Shores, and everything I know about you. You are a man of good character and have done an excellent job up there. And I just want you to understand, from my point of view, absolutely this is no reflection on you whatsoever. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur with that.
Madam Chairman, if I may also.
Yes, Commissioner Davis.
Wheeler and Commissioner O'Brien, if you have an issue with the timing of this, we can clearly modify our ordinance to state such if you have some issues with that. I'm not opposed to that.
I think that's an excellent idea, Wesley.
It's just one of those things that there's clearly nothing, in my opinion, that hence my vote, as well as agreeing with the legal, that prohibits what we've done. In fact, requires what was done, in my opinion. But if you would like some kind of amendment to that, I would be in favor of bringing back that ordinance to do it on, at either at our organizational meeting at the minimum, or
It would have to come,
I want to fall short
come through
of
the process.
Yeah, I want to fall short of making it so that once a commissioner chooses their P&Z appointment, they can't change it. But I understand that we could make a better policy here for the future
I think if there's misfeasance, malfeasance, just like us in office, or if there's something that is dramatically, drastically wrong with an appointee, I think that we should have the right to remove them. But my concern is not, it's the fact that I fear creating a situation. It's hard enough to get people to serve on boards and even run for public office today because of the political situation we're in. And I would like to see these boards work freely and independently of the commission and advise us. We all have the right to vote our conscience, and I think they should have the right to freely vote their conscience without fear of removal because we simply disagree on an issue. If somebody's doing something wrong, inappropriate, illegally, or something of that nature, then obviously they should be removed. And I would, if you're making a motion, I would support amending our ordinance and having staff work on that to, in fact, I can make a motion now. I'll make a motion and the staff come back.
That didn't take long. What was that, 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I don't think that was planned.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying, Commissioner, but I think if there is some transparency issues that have either rightly or unjustifiably come forth here, I'm not going to point fingers. I'm not going to get in that debate. I think that's counterproductive. But I would fall short of it being a lifetime appointment with the commissioner. I would not.
But they expire every 2 years.
Well, they being, well, that's for another debate. But yes, okay. I would be more in favor of an annual basis or something along those lines versus a 2-year.
Well, what if we give direction to the staff to bring something back or put this on a future agenda and look at the options? We don't have to do it now, but the options of changing this ordinance and cleaning it up a bit.
Well, I would like to think on it. You've just pulled something right here on my first meeting, and I haven't had an opportunity.
You're handling it very well, Commissioner.
Well, I thank you very much, and you're handling it very well.
Yeah, Gary figured out how to make a motion fast, didn't he?
Thought I forgot.
So I don't want any hidden agendas on anybody's plate, and I'm sure there are none.
Yep.
But this is America, and we have a freedom of speech, and I appreciate everybody's opportunity here. But thought process needs to go into something before we change it. It's worked really well for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so at that point, if we have a motion and a second, and we've voted, and we've moved on. You had your say.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public notice items. And this is December 4th. A Osceola Commerce Center LP's request to rezone 12.692 acres located north of 9th Street Southwest and approximately 1,250 feet east of 43rd Avenue from CH Heavy Commercial to CG General Commercial. Osceola Commerce Center LP, owner Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard, LLC, agent, quasi-judicial, pages 116 to 117. B, 4D's request to rezone 6.78 acres located on the southwest corner of U.S. Highway 1 and 53rd Street from IL Limited Industrial to CG General Commercial. 4D Vel LLC, owner Knight, McGuire and Associates, Inc., agent, quasi-judicial. And number C, request by Billy L. Hitchcock for the variance from the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, Chapter 913, for a mobile home development at 48th Avenue and 43rd Street, quasi-judicial. Number 10, county administrative matters, a Piper incentive package. Mr. Baird.
Yes, Commissioners. We have been negotiating with Piper ever since the board had a 5-0 vote to offer them $2 million a year for an 8-year period. We've been negotiating through Enterprise Florida, who, in my eyes, has done an exceptional job in the negotiations based on what they have told me. What we have here today is Piper is getting ready to take a proposal to their board. Their site consultant is, and they contacted us, and they just wanted a clear verification that we would agree to a new term. What they want to do is they either want $4 million a year over 3 years, or they want $6 million the first year, 0 the second year, and 6 the third. In order to do this, we would issue a bond issue, or finance it internally, or a combination of both, and pay it back over the 8 years as the commission had voted on prior. They wanted a clarification to make sure that they had the full support of the commission on the new proposal. As you well know, $8 million a year over $2 million a year over 8 years, equals $16 million. What they're asking here is basically $12 million as a present value number of the $16 million. We think this is an excellent proposal. We feel it's good to move forward, and I think that if we want to remain in the running with Piper, and in order to keep Piper, I think it's very important you approve this proposal today. I will tell you, I can't discuss many of the details, but I can tell you that Enterprise Florida has put in some very good clawback provisions to protect our community. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Are there any questions of our county administrator?
I'll move approval to transmit the letter.
Which, are you doing one or two?
I think both are.
Actually, I'd like to leave it up to their option. I don't think it's.
That's my question.
I would like to give them. I think that helps us in the running. It gives them the flexibility when they go to their board, and it really is, to me, basically the same. And it might give us an edge. And when we were discussing, they hadn't made up their mind yet. And I think it gives them a little flexibility, and it would be in both their interest and our interest.
I agree.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chairman.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
General Services, IRC Jail Expansion Project, proposed change order number 15, memorandum dated November 13, 2007, pages 119 and 120. Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The request that we have, the change order, is to go back into the 4 units and put some baffling into those units. Right now, there's an extreme noise problem that's making it very difficult for the correctional officers in there to hear everything that's going on with the level of reverberation that's occurring off those walls. And what we're asking the board to do is approve the request for the change order. We don't have the document in hand. It's being prepared, and because of the time over the holidays, we wanted to kind of move forward. And what we would request is, if the board would approve it, then allow us to bring the document for execution once it's been reviewed both by budget and the legal department to make sure the document is correct.
Any questions from Mr. Frame?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yeah, Tom, the other thing that concerns me, and it's a tremendous oversight, because we had the same problem with the other phases of the jail, and they had come in after the fact and put up things to absorb the sound, get rid of the echoes, etc. And I would have thought that the architect building this jail, whoever they are, would have been aware of this, and this would have been a part of the original drawings, because this is a problem that's indicative to any structure that's all concrete. And, it's just a little disheartening to have to come back in after the fact and make these corrections when, if you've got a hard surface, you're going to have echoing and so on and so forth. So I'll make a motion to follow the recommendation, but I'm concerned that, I'm a little concerned as to why they didn't catch this in the development phase and design phase.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Commissioner-
Passes. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, we would like to explain, we were a little concerned the same way as you were that the architect didn't pick it up, but what happened is the reality is it's very noisy, and we were concerned about the safety of the prison guards, and that's why we passed this on. But we had the very same concerns that you had, that why it wasn't just picked up by the architect.
No, I absolutely agree. It's a safety issue,
Yes.
and it needs to be corrected quickly. But I'm just, sometimes architects, I guess they have the right to miss things when they do something for you, and then they get to charge you for it later.
We're going to have discussions regarding that.
Thank you.
And
Commissioner
I kind of follow up on that, Tom, and we have an add-on like this for a pretty big chunk of money. How do we know this dollar amount is a competitive bid price? I mean, do we go out and get a couple other quotes so that we know this guy's in
No,
line?
we didn't do that simply because we currently have a construction manager on the job. What we're looking at, or what it really boils down, are actual costs, and then they add on their profit and overhead. So we're looking at material cost on it, and that's an open book. I mean, we get to see the numbers, but it would be difficult for us to bring in another contractor on a facility where we've already got it under contract with another contractor, because we haven't closed out the contract on that CM at risk contract.
And I'm not saying we bring in somebody new, but at least maybe get a couple prices to know we're in the ball range. I mean, maybe another guy say, I could do that for $45,000. So,
Well, it's a
how do
good
we
question.
know?
It's just, like I said, normally we don't do that only because we're in the middle of an existing contract. It's very difficult to go out and try to get quotes. I'm trying to think the way
You
to
can't
answer
do
that.
it we can't do it under the documents when you do a construction management at risk bid. If we had done a competitive bid situation, but it's construction manager at risk bid, so that means you utilize it. There's two reasons we did it this way. One is you usually get a competitive cost, and the remaining money gets returned. Second thing is, because we were behind the eight ball in the jail being constructed because we were overcrowded, we wanted the project to move as quickly as possible. But I think if you have those concerns, what we can do, just to give you, if you want, to give you some comfort, we'll get 3 bids and we'll send them to you just to do that. But unfortunately, the way the documents are drafted under a construction management risk contract, we can't do what we have to stay within those parameters and stay with the contractor.
Let me add on to that. Mr. Williams, Lynn Williams, our facilities manager, was the project manager on that project, and Lynn just advised me they did negotiate some of those prices. And Lynn might want to just expand on how those prices were established with them.
Yeah, Lynn Williams, facilities manager. We sent this back to the architect for correction. He took it to a acoustical engineer and looked at it. There were a couple scenarios run as to what the best product was. We needed something that would obviously hold up in a jail facility. They did use the acoustical acoustical contractor that did all the drywall and everything on there. This is actually lower price than where we started. We've negotiated a couple of scenarios with it, and it's not that they took 3 contractors or 3 subs and priced it, but they would all be using the same material. So the only cost difference is the amount of material, the size of the material, and it's all going to be used tectum. So from there, I don't know that we would have saved a great deal by extending it out and looking for 2 or 3 subs to do the same work.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I would also point out for the board's edification that the $75,000 plus that we're talking about is coming out of the contractor's contingency, which is within the existing guaranteed maximum price. So we're not asking the board to inject additional funds into it. It is within the funds that we have budgeted for the project.
Madam Chairman, if I may add, typically with the CMAR also versus the competitive bid process, you get a better quality work product because you're going to find that the contractor is going to make that percentage of profit. And they start, if they're not making that percentage of profit because they misbid something, you're going to find they're going to start to cut corners and you're going to get sloppy subs. And that's certainly something, whenever you build a facility of that magnitude, you need something that is of superior quality. In addition to, might I add, you do have the opportunity to use local subcontractors versus the competitive bid process through the CMAR.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
We'll bring additional information back to Commissioner O'Brien, and what the staff looked at, we'll send it to the commissioners.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
And I'd like to reemphasize the use of local subs one more time.
Thank you. Human Resources, National Association of Counties, NACO, Prescription Card Program, memorandum dated November the 13th, 2007, pages 121 to 145. And this is an exciting program. Would you please give us all the info?
Certainly. Also coming up with me today is the Human Services Program Director at the Health Department. His name is Bradley Bernauer, so he's up here with me as well.
Would you give me your name and
Oh, I'm sorry, my name. My name is Jim Sexton. I'm the Human Resources Director in Indian River County. We're here today to talk about the National Association of Counties Drug Prescription Card Program. Basically what this program is offered to all county citizens, and it's basically for the uninsured or underinsured of our citizens that are out there. What this program does is basically a discount card. It's almost as if you're a preferred shopper at a local grocery store. You get your card swiped and then you get this discount that's built in, and this is good through most your major chain pharmacies across the country, for that matter. And in fact, this is a program that's offered nationwide. In Florida, there's about 22 counties that are currently involved in the program, and nationwide there are about 800 counties. The typical savings is anywhere from a few percentage points to 22% on a prescription. It's all relative to what the prescription is. But as an example, during a pilot program of about 17 counties, during that pilot program, there was 48,000 prescriptions and a savings of $658,000 during the pilot program. Since then, Hernando County, from May of 2006 to May of 2007, had a savings of $923,000. The citizens did. This is not a county plan. The county doesn't spend money on this plan. This is just a discount card offered to citizens. They carry it in their pocket, their wallet. When they go to buy a prescription, they flash the card, and then they get the prescription. Just as another note, Pasco County has over 64,000 of its citizens taking advantage of the program, and on average, 5,500 people use it a month with an average savings of about $9.50 per prescription. So a lot of folks out there are saving some money through their counties, offering them this program through Caremark. Right now, who uses the program, or where is the bulk of the program used? Ages 50 through 89 use roughly 60% of the program. Ages 50 to 59, 12%, 60 to 69, 22%, and ages 80 to 89, 16%. So the bulk of the users of this program are the elderly, and that would make sense because they usually need more prescriptions, and some of them are underinsured or uninsured. Also, an interesting statistic that 60% of those using it are female. So I found that interesting. Palm Beach County offers this, St. Lucie offers this, Hernando, as just mentioned, Pasco, and other 22 others in the state of Florida. And others are jumping on board, and here we are considering it today of jumping on board as well. So we think it's a good idea. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the program.
Any questions, commissioners? Mr. Fletcher?
I don't know if Mr. Sexton pointed out another valuable feature that is very unique to the program. And it's something to do about animals.
Pets.
Dependent animals.
That
Pets.
is true. This card also works as a discount card towards pet medications as well.
All pet medications?
I don't know about all pet medications, but certainly some of them, I guess. I haven't talked to I did talk to some of the other counties who administer it. I didn't get any details about the pet aspect of it. It's certainly in several articles that are out there. If you Google Caremark, Google NACO prescription card, you'll come up with literally hundreds of articles nationwide, from Kansas, from Duluth. I mean, you name the place, and there's a county in the state that has it, and they all mention the pet benefit as well, so it's there.
Fantastic program with lateral benefits, and at what cost factor to the county or to the taxpayer?
Zero.
Zero.
No cost whatsoever. We just have to sign the agreement, which is actually before you today. Actually, back in July is when the board actually decided to go forward with this program, pending some legal review of the actual contract. We've done that. I've included in the agenda item for your review is Mr. Bill DeBrawl's legal opinion. He's the deputy county attorney. He's offered some opinion in there. He basically, in a nutshell, says it's a good program. You know, there's concern, very minor concern, is what information does a citizen have to give? And the bottom line is zero. When we hand out these cards, there's no enrollment form. You just pick up the card and you start using the form. The only information you'll be given is to the pharmacy. So you'll give your name, I'm sure address, whatever else they need as a pharmacy, and that information would only be transmitted between them and the drug manufacturers, and that's really the only information a citizen would have to give.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes, Bob. We have something from the audience.
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. It's not clear to me why the government has to be involved in this program at all. I mean, why can't the recipient just go to the pharmacy, get the card, and not have government involved in this program at all? It seems like...
I can probably help answer that. It's through the National Association of Counties. So it's because of our affiliation with that national organization, and this is a benefit through it, similar to being if you were an AARP or something like that. I mean, we're just the agency because of the membership that we have available, and the taxpayers pay for that membership through our annual dues.
It seems like this should be optional to the counties to participate in this program.
It is optional.
It is optional.
We're making a decision on it today.
We're deciding to participate.
Yes.
And all I'm saying is, why do we have to be involved in it at all as a government agency?
Well,
to help the
Commissioner
citizens
Davis
of our
just
community.
explained, it's just like if you're a member of AARP, you're entitled to certain group-type benefits. This is a benefit offered through the National Association of Counties, of which we are a member. It's purely voluntary on our part, but it's a benefit that we can offer to the citizens and taxpayers at no cost to them, no cost to the county. And the other thing, Jim didn't mention it, but folks may have other insurance, they may have other discount cards, and how it works is you present every discount you got, and they run it through, and you get the best discount. So they're not, the citizens who use this aren't locked into only this discount. If they have another program that gives them a better discount, they go with that one. So this is just one option to save folks money that is a benefit we can bring to the citizens.
So this is citizens only are eligible for this program, is that what you're saying?
Indian River County residents, correct.
What's a resident of Indian River County, if I may?
It's anyone who lives or has a house in Indian River County. It's that simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Bob, we don't administer.
Peter, I still object to the county being involved when they could go to the pharmacy and accomplish the same thing, and we'd be completely out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion?
Plenty.
Yes.
I'd just like to mention the health department's role in all of this, since we are going to be kind of administering it. It is a program that, without the county's involvement, would not be available to the county residents. So that has to be started. Initially, what we have in place right now through the Human Service Department, we offer vouchers to individuals who need assistance with prescriptions. Those vouchers are limited to $90 per calendar year. We've served 370 families last year through that voucher program in the Human Services. That's funded through the county. The Health Department has an indigent drug program, IDP program, that's through the pharmaceutical companies. They serviced 515 families in the Vero Health Department and 63 families in the Gifford Health Department. Through this, the total was about $390,000 worth of pharmaceuticals distributed through the IDP program. This program is going to help fill in some of the gaps that we currently have. We're not even scratching the surface with what we've got in place right now. Human Services, we're finding people coming in trying to decide whether or not to pay for this prescription or eat, literally, one or the other. So hopefully through this we'll be able to make that decision a little bit better. We're going to distribute this at the health departments as people come in, indicate that they have an issue, also through Human Services and at health fairs that we have throughout the county.
Thank you very much. Perhaps if this passes, which I hope it will, we could put it on our website too, the information.
Yeah, so we'll put it on the website, and I think we'll try and also we'll talk to ARP and maybe the Senior Resources Center and see if they have individuals so we can all work together and try and help our constituents.
Get the word out. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes. You may.
Good morning, Renee Renzi, Waverly Place, Vero Beach. Where do people come to get these cards? That's the one thing nobody has told us. Do we go to the Human Resources Director?
You've got, right now, you can go to the Health Department, at the Human Services, or you can go to our HR right here at 1801 27th Street. And we're going to look at talking to ARP and the Senior Resources Center and see if they can also be involved. We will have those addresses. We'll post them on our website, and we will also make sure the information, we'll get it in the newspaper.
In the newspaper.
Right, but
okay.
Joe, I believe the cards aren't available yet because we haven't signed the contract,
Yeah.
right?
Once we sign the contract, we'll do a kickoff, make sure that all the information gets sent out. And we encourage any agency that wants to be involved, that's a nonprofit, to help indigent to get, or people that don't have money, to contact us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's an important question.
Kickoff as close to January 1st as possible. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get the cards. I get nervous when I talk to you folks up here on camera and everything, but February, late January, early February will be the kickoff. We'll have a full launch in the paper. It'll be done right. It'll be on the website. Information will get out. It'll have names and agency names, addresses, phone numbers, contacts of where they can go get the cards.
Okay.
And we'll also bring the kickoff back to the commission so that it's on TV and everyone else gets the information.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, the mobile home parks would be another asset we could hit. Office of Management and Budget, Property Tax Reform, memorandum dated November 13, 2007, page 146.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Jason Brown, Budget Director for the county. I'd like to apologize beforehand. I'm fighting off a little cold, so hopefully I can keep my voice here. Basically, on October 30th, the Planning and Zoning Commission at its regular meeting had requested an update on the property tax reforms at a following meeting. We made a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission on November 8th at their meeting on November 8th, and subsequently we're here today to make that same presentation before the Board of County Commissioners. Just wanted to give everyone a brief update on what's happened with the tax reform, where we are, where we're going from here. Basically, as you know, a lot of this will be a review for the commissioners. There was a special legislative session called in June of this year to address tax reform. There were two major items that passed. The first was a statutory rollback on local government taxes for the 2007-2008 year that we're in and moving forward. The second item was a constitutional amendment that was to be placed on the ballot for a super exemption, super homestead exemption of up to $195,000. Basically, the rollback legislation required all local governments, with the exception of school districts, to roll back their taxes for the fiscal year that we're in now by 3 to 9%, depending upon how much the revenues had increased between 2001 and 2006. As I mentioned, school districts were exempted. Special districts that were for a public safety purpose only had to cut 3% as opposed to up to 9% possibly. Indian River County fell into the 5% bracket. So our general fund and our MSTU, we were required to cut 5%. We were right on the cusp of only having to cut 3%. I think there was one county below us that had to cut 5%. And interesting to note that based on our revenue profile, if we had been a city, we would have only had to cut 3%. But the way the legislation was passed, we had to cut 5%. Now our emergency services district, since that was a special district dedicated to public safety, had to cut 3%. This same legislation affects not only the current year we're in, but affects all future fiscal years for 2008, 2009, and moving forward. Limits the millage rates to the rollback rate plus a factor for inflation on a moving forward basis. The super exemption, I won't spend too much time on this because it was basically deemed too confusing by the chief circuit judge in Leon County and was removed from the ballot. If this had passed, it would have been an additional 13% cut, estimated cut for Indian River County. In light of that super exemption being kicked off the ballot, the legislature had another special session in October, special session D, and they passed a new constitutional amendment. And I want to go over the basics of that amendment. The House put out an estimate that showed that it was going to be about a 4.5% decrease for Indian River County for all the non-school governments. They didn't break it out based on cities or counties or special districts or anything like that. It was just an overall non-school number. So we wanted to take a further look and see what the impact would be on Indian River County as an organization. When we looked at the numbers, we placed the impact on this organization at a range between 5.6% and a 6.4% cutback. A summary of this bill that was passed: A, it provides an additional $25,000 homestead exemption for all homesteaded property. That kicks in after $50,000 in value, so a home has to have an assessed value of $75,000 or more to enjoy the entire $25,000 additional exemption. There's a portability benefit for Save Our Homes. It's up to $500,000. That's an exact same amount if someone is moving to the same value or greater value. If someone is downsizing to a lower value house, it's a proportionate. There's a proportionate decrease. Then there's a tangible personal property exemption of $25,000. This is for real property that commercial property owners pay a tax on. And then there is a 10% assessment cap on non-homesteaded property. This is all your commercial property, your non-homesteaded residential, all that type of property. Once again, this has to be passed by the voters on January 29th in order to go into effect. And just wanted to go over a rundown of our estimated fiscal impact. The largest single item is the additional homestead exemption. We're estimating that will cost us about $4.8 million in revenue, or 5.1% on an all-fund basis. The impact in the general fund would be $2.8 million. MSTU is about $600,000. Emergency Services District about $1.4 million. There would be no impact on the bond funds, as those are exempted. The tangible personal property exemption, that's about 0.5% across the board, about $460,000 decrease. The Save Our Homes portability. This is the most difficult portion to cost out. We didn't really have a good mechanism to cost these numbers out. The additional homestead exemption and the tangible personal property exemption are pretty easy to come up with that cost. Portability depends on a lot. How many people move in a given year? How long have they been in their homes? How much do they have under the Save Our Homes cap? So what we did was we basically used the house numbers and factored that in, because the house has come up with an estimate of that cost. And basically that puts our all funds cost at a little under $800,000. But I would say that number could be significantly lower than that. It's very difficult to forecast. The 10% cap on non-homesteaded property, that will have no impact for 2008, 2009, because that is the base year for the 10%. It would have an impact going forward, 2009, 2010. My personal thought is I don't think it will be a large impact, because we would have to be back in another environment like we were in 2004, 2005, where we're seeing 25% appreciation. 20% appreciation before this is a large impact. How soon that happens again, I don't know. I don't know if that's next year. The House did estimate that the statewide cost could be $1.2 billion over the 5-year period. And this is a total. If you total all those together, it's $5.9 million, or 6.4%. I'd given you a range before of 5.6% to 6.4%. The difference between that 5.6% and the 6.4% is the Save Our Homes. We think that the Save Our Homes could be somewhere between $0 and $800,000. So that's why we have a range of 5.6 to 6.4% cost. These cuts would be coming on top of the 5% rollbacks that we had to do this year. So we could be facing some difficult decisions next year when it comes time to formulate the budget. What happens going forward? In our experience, we're seeing that a lot of residents have been disappointed in the tax decrease they've seen. What's happened is there's a phenomenon that the market kind of turned around this last year, and the assessed valuations went down. And what happened was the homesteaded properties, who are actually seeing decreases in this county on our taxes for the past few years, that situation was reversed and turned on its head, and those folks actually saw increases. I can tell you myself, my tax bill had gone down the last 2 years. This year it went up. So it's kind of a where's the beef moment that a lot of people are having, is where's my tax cut? And the tax cuts are not something that, there was this big hoopla and this big promise of huge tax increases. So there's been kind of this environment of unrealistic expectations, where people have been promised these huge tax increases, and they haven't really seen them in large part.
Well, I think that's because of the school. They gave the schools an automatic 6.5% increase.
Right.
And when they did that our decrease, it did away with our decrease. So we had a 5% decrease to meet the target. They gave the schools a 6.5% increase. So most people had a 1.5% increase.
Right.
Minimum.
I think also what you're seeing is the homesteaded properties increased by the 3% of the CPI, while you're seeing a decrease in the valuation of other properties. Therefore, it is catching up, and it's truly putting it back of the millage rate.
I wonder if the decrease is showing up on the appraisals yet, though, because they do it by previous sales.
No, they do it by previous sales based on January 1st of 2008. Okay. Therefore, our next ones are actually 2007. Now it'll be 2008 coming up this January 1st. So, and there has been some downward pressures on real estate as of 2007. January 1st.
Exactly, and there's some delay in that process, because as you're mentioning, Leslie, those dates are based on January 1st, and they have to look back. So this last tax roll we saw some decreases, but in valuation, but not not to the point of where the market is today. So that'll take until next year before those additional valuation decreases really kick in. And the laws the way they are on the books now, there's the ability for the legislature to come back and make more cuts as they go. Speaker of the House was quoted as saying, this isn't enough, we need to come back and cut more in the spring. We're kind of concerned about this becoming a rite of spring, that the legislature comes and hacks away at local government budgets. You know, we want to see tax reform as in a responsible manner that addresses some of the needs and not just taking an axe to things. The super exemption, that appeal is still seems to be an open question. Last I checked, actually the day before the special session ended in October, the Supreme Court sent out a little reminder that said, we haven't reviewed this yet. That said, this could go back on the ballot, who knows. There's also something out there called the Taxation and Budget Reform Commission, set up in the Constitution to review these taxation matters on every 20 years. They're to be coming up with recommendations that could be placed on the November 2008 ballot that could result in more decreases. And also here we are, real estate values are dropping. Right now, all of our sales tax revenues, so we're facing a lot of other decreases without these additional tax cuts and the property taxes. Also, some of these valuations are kind of unwinding themselves a little bit. Over the last few years, what we saw was there were people in Save Our Homes that their valuation was capped at 3%. In a lot of those years, it was something lower, like 1.9% based on inflation. And you saw commercial property that was seeing 15, 20, 25% increases. Now that's kind of should be undoing itself. The free market's kind of undoing it a little bit. So those commercial and the non-homesteaded residential are probably going to be seeing decreases while the Save Our Homes see that increase. We saw a little bit of that this year. That will continue and kind of should work to undo some of these inequities just naturally based on the free market. That's one of the questions: is the timing of these reforms? Is this the right time? Basically, now at this point, I'd like to turn it over if there are any questions.
Any questions of Jason before his voice gives out?
No, Madam Chairman, I don't have any questions, and very good report, by the way, but I guess really what I'd like to see, you know, I don't know of a family out there that's not hurting right now from the prices of fuel and what we're going through, and quite frankly, I'm looking forward as a commissioner to the challenges ahead of us to be able to appropriate funds that we do have come in an appropriate manner to give some tax relief to everybody in the community. I think I really am. I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I don't want this tax reform or the budget cutbacks or anything like that to come across as the sky is falling mentality. I don't want to try to scare anybody. I think that basically we all know we were able to cut 5% last year and the sun still came up the next day. I think it'll happen again. If we need to cut again this year, there'll be opportunities. We just need to get smart about our priorities. And so if I could, just to give it some influence in the right direction, let's do this prudently. Let's not do this like the sky is falling to scare anybody that they're not going to be able to call a fireman and have them put their fire out or something.
No, we're going, I agree with you, and we're going to do more with less.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think when the statements are made that we're going to have to lay off firemen, police officers, deputy sheriffs, et cetera.
Let convicts free. I mean,
not build bridges or roads. These are the things that we're supposed to do in government, and I would anticipate that we would continue to do. They would be at the bottom of the list, not the top of the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we will labor is our largest cost, and we tried to do the budget this year without saying the sky is falling in. However, we have to keep in mind labor is the cost, and we won't be able to have the increases we've had in the past. I don't think you have to worry about us laying off firemen and things like that. We never said we would. We saw other cities do that, and we felt we could do it. However, I will say there's only a limited pot of money. We're going to have to look at how we do things. We may have to look at privatization in many areas and what kind of services we want to deliver. So it's going to be, and it's not all bad. It's going to be challenging, but we need to go into this with our eyes wide open.
Anyone from the audience? I see one person.
Good morning, Chuck Meckley, 1999 Point West Drive. I have a question for Jason. I know we're talking about the need to cut budgets and things such as this, but what would be the mechanism to allow a county to not cut budgets or actually adjust their budgets upward based on the county needs? To my way of understanding, it would be based on per capita income being increased in the county?
Right, that rollback is adjusted for the personal income in the state of Florida on a statewide basis.
And the point I'd like to make to that is I hope, as Commissioner Davis said, and the entire commission looks at next year, because if we truly take on a strong economic development base for our county, that can lead towards per capita income increasing in our county. It could lead to a better stabilized tax base in our county, and it could also be a way to plan for the future to help stabilize our budget for our county and lead ourselves into the future through a means such as that. And that, I think, is truly the challenge as we look into 08 and 09 for our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee?
Renee Renzi, Waverly Place, Vero Beach again. I have a simple suggestion. I don't know what on earth your utilities bill is for the electricity every month, but this building is always like a refrigerator. The other building is like a refrigerator, so I think a little thermostat adjustment might help. And then when I come to the Theater Guild at night, this parking lot is, I could read my newspaper, it's so bright in here. Is it really necessary to burn all those lights all that time? It's, savings start with little things. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jason. That was very enlightening, and we'll hope for the very best.
Thank you.
I'd just like to comment on what Renee said.
Okay.
I think that a couple of things that are going on, we're constantly reevaluating and to find out ways to be more efficient, more effective. And also I think the green approach to look at the lifespan and what we can expect in a return on investment or expenditure. And I think the county's looking at those things, and I think we're going to continue to look at them. So I think your point's well taken, but we're not sitting here in a vacuum and ignoring that. Thank you, Renee.
Madam Chairman, and if I might add, I had a conversation with Joe Baird this week on that very subject, on the weekends and at nights. We do have a lot of lighting here in the building. It is fluorescent for the most part. And unfortunately, the timing mechanism and relays that I had anticipated being in place are not in place, and he's checking that out now to ensure that we have a motion detection as well. Some of the more remote areas do have timing mechanisms, and such as the restroom areas, but the general access areas don't. And Joe is looking into that as I do come here in the later part of the evening and do see that we have a lot of lighting. So point well taken, and I believe it's being addressed.
Thank you very much. Utility Services, West Wabasso Community Water Project, Phase Number 1, Sheltra and Son, Inc., Change Order Number 2, and final payment to Contract 2006-051, memorandum dated November 1, 2007, pages 147, 155.
For the record, Eric Olson, Director of Utilities. This is the first of actually what will be two phases in Wabasso, kind of a real success story. This is the final pay and the deductive change order, $50,000 off the original contract. I just do want to take a moment and kind of extend a little bit of appreciation to some folks that made this process absolutely possible. Victor Hart, our workhorse Teddy Floyd, Julianne Price, Himanshu Mehta, Art Pfeffer. This was a project that was not only designed and conceived internally, the original grant amount, $825,000. The first phase that was conceived was actually done so quickly and such what I would call cost effectiveness, we had an opportunity to do phase 2. The original idea was to connect 65 people. We actually will end up connecting nearly 110. This is straight to the house, and this will be less than the total CDBG total grant amount. So anyway, this is basically what we're bringing to the board here today is the final pay for phase 1.
I move staff's recommendation.
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
And I would like to thank those people, too. This was a very great project, and thank you. Victor's been around a long time. Thank you, Victor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. Approval of bid award and sample agreements for IRC bid number 2008015, Vero Lake Estates, Master Plan, Water Main, Phase 1, Utilities Department, memorandum dated November 13, 2007.
I'll second that, Madam Chairman. And
Any discussion?
Yes, I mean, I think that, Mr. Olson, the price that this came in was, I mean, a good day for the county, a good day for the residents of Bear Lake Estates. I'm very, very happy to see that, what it was, $1.2 million under the budget.
Yes.
And so we were able to move forward with some of the plans in there. Excited to have this as a fire prevention mechanism for the residents in Bear Lake Estates.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have under discussion.
Yes.
How are we paying for this, and what are the chances that we're going to keep this on a pay-as-we-go level as far as our enterprise funds go?
The initial purchase of this process is through impact fees. We're actually doing, it's a master plan line, but as people hook up to the line, we have a mechanism where you pay line extension fees, which pays for the portion that runs in front of their property, plus the normal costs of installation of the meter and the connection fees and that sort of thing. So it's built into the system. There are no rate increases required whatsoever as part of the project.
Any projections on amount of time for payback?
Well, typically it'll take multiple years on this sort of thing. My suspicion is with Vero Lakes Estates growing as it is, we'll probably see this probably in a 10-year period, but it could come quicker than that. Again, it's hard to say based on the growth.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Wheeler, if I could help you with this a little bit. As you know, we had the issue with the water and the pavement and the sewer in Vero Lake Estates, and it brought up nothing short of a lynching, for the lack of a better term. And what we had the opportunity to do here is we understood that we had to have some mechanism for fire prevention in the community. There's not a fire department out there yet or near there yet. Well, I don't want to say near there, but anyhow, in the vicinity of the 510 and 512 area. And I will emphasize yet on that also. But what we are looking at with this is this will put approximately, I'm going to say about 70% of the houses in the Vero Lake Estates community within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant. Now, what that's going to do in addition to that is this is going to have many residents, as in speaking with them, it's going to have them opt into the water system instead of it being forced upon them. And they're going to have issues with their wells and their softeners, and then they'll be able to drive by a hydrant and understand that there's potable water near, and they will opt into it. And I think really this is a good model of how to handle a big issue like that could have really been quite a bad situation for our utilities department that in fact we've turned around and I think have put a positive spin on it.
Well, I think it's a legitimate question, and also the answers that you gave. And I think public safety is important when we look at fire and EMS, but having things in place. But also, I think we need to be ever careful with any of the funds that we have that are enterprise funds to make sure that the customer base that exists isn't subsidizing the future customer base.
No.
And people should be paying their own way for this. And I'm glad to hear that, and I think you're right, Wesley. I think people will connect to this. I know I was on a well and septic, and I think if you look at it over several years, it's cheaper to pay the money to sign up for county water than it is to keep your well and your softener going.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Any other questions or conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll take a 10-minute break for captioning.
I never said you had anything against Bob Davis.
Call the meeting back to order, please. County Attorney's Matters request policy direction on terms of lease for Gifford Park Security House, deferred from November the 13th, 2007. Memorandum dated November 7, 2007, pages 174 and 175. Will?
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, 4 years ago, the Parks and Recreation Committee recommended that a security house be built in the Gifford Park at which a sheriff's deputy could reside. And we're now before you to get some direction as to the terms and conditions of the lease of that house. And as a matter of background, we currently have three other county parks where a deputy resides, Donald McDonald, the South County Park, and the Fairgrounds. It's a little different in each of those instances because the tenant has brought their own mobile home to the site. No rent is paid at those locations. The water, sewer, and electric are metered separately from the park, and the county pays 1/2 of the utilities. There's no irrigation and no pest control. We're here primarily for the Gifford Park, but we'd like some direction and would recommend that we may want to formalize written leases at those other tenancies as well, just so each person that's residing there in the county is clear on their respective rights and obligations under that tenancy. In the case of the Gifford Park, the county built a permanent residence which is now complete, and the lease as discussed would contain provisions that the tenant would be in a duty status assigned to a marked patrol car. The lease would prohibit any act that would allow a lien to be placed on the property. It would contain certain termination rights, such as if the tenant's no longer employed an active fit-for-duty deputy or is charged with some kind of misconduct in his performance of his duty. There would be a standard 30-day termination for any reason in favor of the county. The tenant would be required to keep monthly detailed daily security logs addressing any issues involving the security at the park. The lease prohibits alcohol and pets on the premises, and because it's a county building, we would pay the hazard and windstorm premium, which we estimate at $900. The tenant would be responsible for any content insurance or renter's insurance for his personal property. The tenant would also be responsible for installing hurricane shutters in advance of the storm, and should the storm destroy the structure, we would have no duty under the lease to provide alternate housing. As is typical with leases, the county's landlord would be responsible for exterior maintenance, and there's a 1-year punch list warranty, and the appliances have a manufacturer's warranty. The tenant would be responsible for the interior upkeep, and as structured or as proposed, the initial term would be for 2 years, subject to the termination clauses that we've already mentioned, and there'd be a $1,000 cash security deposit to be held to the end of the tenancy. There's no rent. The tenant would pay for all utilities and any pest control or lawn cutting within the fenced area of the house. And we're asking whether these terms are acceptable to you, if you think we need to have any additional provisions, and if you're satisfied, delegate the county administrator the authority to sign the lease after review by county legal staff.
Thank you very much. Any questions of our attorney?
No.
May I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I would like to move staff's recommendation with a couple of exceptions. I'd like to remove the $1,000 cash security deposit, and the reason for that being is we're trusting this individual with millions of dollars of county property, and not just the house that he's living in. And it does treat things a little differently. And I'd like to see the finished lease that we would approve. And the big difference is there's 4 parks there that are being looked after, and unlike the other facilities where there's 1 park or school in that case, in the other cases. And the fact that also those parks are very busy. They have a lot of people there at all different hours, and I think that quite frankly we're getting very inexpensive security for those buildings in that park, And on top of that, in addition to that, just as a footnote, Deputy Floyd is going to be the deputy there, and he also contributes hundreds of hours to this community on an annual basis, to no charge to the community and working with kids. And I can't think of a more suited person to be there than Teddy, with his attitude and his ability and his knowledge of law enforcement and knowledge of the community that he's going to be serving by watching these buildings. So my motion would be to approve the concept, have a final lease come back, and eliminate the $1,000 cash deposit.
Second that motion.
Any discussion?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I happen to agree with Commissioner Wheeler about the $1,000. First off, it's a rather insignificant amount of money. It's $1,000. I don't know what type of security element that could provide for holding us capable of any reparations or any cause for damage. I do have a concern if we do have any future arrangements like this, and I can only think that if we place a $1 amount on that, one single dollar for security, that we now have not closed the door for any security application on any future rental that we may or may not engage in the future. So if it's something as insignificant as $1, which would be held, I believe, in escrow and interest bearing, I'm sure that no one's concerned about the interest on the dollar or one single dollar, but it's a point to bring out. And if we do set precedents today and not have any security amount, which is negotiable on any other future dealings that we might have, this might be a trend, and I did not want to close the door for that endeavor. I realize $1,000 is a lot of money for one single individual to have to put up as collateral, but I believe that a dollar, one single dollar, would be appropriate. So,
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I believe really if we're going to have a lease and to make it enforceable, we have to have value and consideration. Therefore, we could, in my opinion, we would not be able to have zero in there as far as a dollar amount. Typically, on a lot of deeds, I see $10 or $100, something like that. I think that would be, in our legal's eyes, enough to have a binding contract with Deputy Floyd.
Well, I think the consideration is the security that's being provided to the park rather than any financial consideration.
Okay.
And honestly, if you're going to do away with a deposit, a $1 deposit would be just an administrative nightmare to process the paperwork.
As long as it costs more money than it's worth.
You can always change your mind in a future lease. They're all negotiable.
Let's state that is the value and consideration then is the nighttime security in the lease, and let's move forward.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
okay.
So my understanding is that we'll change that, and we will bring it back, the final lease, forward.
For approval.
That's the motion, correct.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Anybody from the audience like to speak on this?
First, my name is Victor Hart Sr., 4635 34th Avenue. Number one, I'm glad to see this program come into the end. But I have, am I understanding right, we going to haul off this $1,000 or?
That's correct. That's eliminated, taken off.
Okay, all right, okay. So I ain't got to go into that one. What I would like to see, first I want to thank the county commissioners. I want you all to know I really appreciate that you are a human man with a heart of concern. You know, there's a man here called Deacon Richardson some years ago, and I'm going to make this close, President. Chairman, I'm sorry. But when I look, the reason why I went to Commissioner Friend and ask to put a guardhouse in that community. I come up poor. I come up a poor fella. I mean, he was poor than poor. I didn't know all these fancy names we have today. But when I see the citizen of Indian River County put the kind of investment in the Gifford community, now I'm talking about people going in their pocket, I'm talking about the churches and what raising money. When I see these people take their hard money and invest it in the Gifford community, and all these many years, all of these people's investment were just out there. And I know, if not all, most of you know the thousands of dollars private people put investment in the Gifford to upgrade the Gifford community. But all of them were just laying out there. Nobody looking, everybody coming and go, Victor running around out there. And I went to Commissioner Friend, I said, Miss Friend, you know, we need to at least appreciate the citizen and the private investment of this county to put that kind of money, invest their personal money out there with the pool and all these other things we have in the community. But nobody oversaying it. All of us just running and go out and do all of this. But so far, we as private citizens, we try to make sure is to let the people, we appreciate the investment of your money you put in the Gifford community, so we're going to try to look over it. But just look at it. We private citizens, we not law enforcement to say, get out of here, or come over here and do this. But here, we try 3 other places to overlook, to watch their black Gifford community. Nobody wanted to do it. This young man here volunteered his time. He said, I'll do it. I'll do it. And you know, I'm glad, brother, commissioners, you all eliminate that $1,000, but it bothered me to think somebody looking over, we up in the middle, and I hope somebody one of these days will sit down and really get a piece of paper and see the value of those 40 acres of land we got out there in that community. Look at all of the investment we have in here, and it just so to speak, out there. Now we're getting somebody to come who's going to be responsible to overlook that. Now, I'm cutting this short, Madam Chair, because I know you figure I'm able to talk like I used to. But let's look at this. If somebody come up with a number of the amount investment in those 40 acres of land in there, and imagine if we would have to, now no other community in the Indian River County that I know of have that kind of investment on a piece of land nowhere for recreation for everybody. Just so happen the property is located in the Gifford community. But all of that facility is open to every person in Indian River County, and your friend, your niece, your neighbor there. Now, let's look at the amount of money we would have to pay somebody to hire a law enforcement or some type of agency to oversee that land. And here, this man volunteered to give his service. But I want you commissioners, I don't know whether this could be done, but Ms. Fran, Commissioner Fran, she stand up not only for the Gifford, but for the county commissioner of Indian River County. That lady turned down 3 buildings, 4-bedroom and other, and she said, I want to see a CB block building put up on the county recreation property. And now here today we are at the point to make that to be a reality. And for that I hope somebody say, Commissioner Friend, thank you. If nobody else say, Victor will say to Ms. Friend, thank you for what you've done for this community. I'm going to cut it. I ain't going no further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victor.
Commissioners, I want to say thank you. It's truly an honor to stand before you to protect this county. As my former sheriff right there told you, this is a job to be done, and I'm real honored. Time and money won't ever mention up to the time that we're going to stand out there with those kids and do what it is needed for our community, not just in the Gifford area, but the whole county. And I just want to thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys, and thank you for all the support we've done. Mr. Davis, O'Brien, Sheriff Wheeler, Ms. Bowden, Jill. I can call you that because you was my partner.
Thanks, Teddy.
And Mr. Collins and Mr. Beard, thank you so much. It is an honor. This is something that has been going on for a while. We've been battling back and forth late night out there, 1 or 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, kids doing. Even with the house being built, we had 80 or 100 kids all around and backed up. And now the authority, and to the rest of the guys that watch this, those guys in the park, it stops now. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say one thing. I've known Teddy for several years, and Teddy, this county is blessed to have a deputy like Teddy that cares about the kids. I've seen him take money out of his own pocket and buy shoes for kids that couldn't afford them. He gives of his time to the point that I think it created some personal problems for him in the past because he spent more time in the community with kids than perhaps with his family at the time. And Teddy has just got a heart that's much bigger than he is. And I'll tell you, there's people I respect, but I have a great deal of respect for Deputy Teddy Floyd. He's a good man.
Thank you, Teddy. And happy Thanksgiving to you. And happy Thanksgiving to Fran Adams, too, Commissioner Adams. We do want to acknowledge her. Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, before the vote, the motion was to bring the lease back. I think we've got the general terms here, and we won't have another meeting for a couple of weeks. I think the intent is to get Deputy Floyd in the house as soon as possible. So if you would, I'd like the authority for Joe Baird to sign the lease as administrator. We'll bring the lease back at the next meeting, and I'll put a clause in subject to modification at that meeting if you think.
Does anyone have an objection?
I'll amend the motion if I need to make that clear.
I just like to get the house occupied and the security rolling.
We have okay, that's amended with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Happy house hunting. No, you've got a house.
Housewarming now.
B, authorization to advertise for public hearing on amendment to Section 104-.06 of the Ethics Ordinance as it pertains to invitations to annual holiday parties, groundbreaking, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, memorandum dated November 14, 2007, pages 176 to 180. Will?
Madam Chairman, 'tis the season, and with the season comes invitations to holiday parties. And I got one a week or two ago, and I had some nagging concern because we've got an ethics ordinance that was adopted in 1994 and 1995, and on the face of it, the general rule is a commissioner or an employee shall not accept anything of value, including entertainment, anything of monetary value, including food or refreshments, because of the person's official position. So the ordinance on its face would prohibit going to holiday parties. There's an exception for food and beverages that can be consumed at a single setting, but it's subject to being under the statutory per diem for meals. And the difficulty with that is every few years that per diem may change from $6 to $11 or $12 to $19, depending on whether it's lunch or dinner, what time the event's given. It may be difficult to evaluate when you get an invitation or even know whether you're going to get cheese and crackers or a well-done buffet. And I guess the reason I'm here is because I've got some institutional memory, and I know that this came before a former commission, and they discussed it, and they said it was never our intent to preclude holiday parties, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, groundbreakings, and they discussed that at previous commissions, but it was never incorporated into the code. And my concern is, on the face of it, it says you can't accept any food or refreshment, and the ambiguity of how much, what time of day you're going is very difficult. And I'd like your authority to come forward with an ordinance amendment that would add to the 11 exceptions that are in the code now for things like flu shots, discounts at theme parks that are offered to all employees, awards like plaques. There are 11 exceptions right now, and I'd simply like the authority to add to them a 12th and a 13th, which would relate to
cheese and crackers.
Well, no, just cheese, just cheese.
Annual holiday parties, open houses, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, and ceremonial occasions. And if you choose not to, then I'd rather have it black and white that holiday parties are out. But the former commission said we never intended that to be the effect of the ethics ordinance, and I just want to make it clear in the ordinance if it's your pleasure.
I'll move the county attorney's recommendation that we add the additional two.
I'd have to bring it back through an ordinance, but I'd like the authorization to go forward.
There's clearly things that I think that, in fact, there's more than as a commissioner I can make things that we go to that may or may not be because of the title. There's certain things we go to because of their organizations we believe in, and as far as open houses and such as that. And I understand the intent of the ordinance at the same time. Just because you have cheese and not crackers keeps you under the threshold, but if you have cheese with crackers, it puts you over the threshold or something like that. We need some sanity back in this and still be able to uphold the integrity of the ordinance.
Any other discussion?
Second.
That was a second, yes.
Thank you.
Vote.
Yes, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
And then your final one is modification and substantial termination of developers agreement between Indian River County, Florida and Oslo 27 LLC for 27th Avenue between 13th Street Southwest and 17th Street Southwest, dated December 12, 2006. Memorandum dated November 14, 2007, pages 181 to 31.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I just have one question. Have we received the completed engineering designs and stuff that was part of this?
No, that's what I want the discussion on, because I spoke with Mr. Swanson about this after we prepared it. We do have a continuing obligation to complete the engineering and design functions under the current contract by December 12th, and I left that in the modification. Mr. Swanson had indicated to me, and I'll let him speak for himself, that those were about 60% design now, and part of the reason may have been the consultant was working with the county on other intersection designs. Maybe you could explain the status of those design drawings and how much of an extension would be needed to complete.
Jerry Swanson, PNS Properties, 3001 Ocean Drive. I talked to the engineering company, Kimley Horn, yesterday. They are 60% complete. They told me that they are asking the county for another 6 to 9 months to complete them, based on the fact that the Oslo corridor is also connected to the 27th Avenue corridor. And so that's the time frame that he gave me. And I think Chris Mora can talk to that and tell you whether that in fact is true. As explained to me, it was also the Cumberland Farms intersection that has created a delay on this. And since Kimley Horn is doing both the Oslo Road and they're doing the 27th Avenue, they're doing them simultaneously. That was the explanation I've got. We are obligated under the terms to complete the design, and obviously we'll do that.
If 9 months is acceptable, on page 183 is the termination and modification, and the first paragraph speaks to those provisions that are rescinded, and in the middle it says provisions of 2G which related to construction and payment for the improvement, other than completing engineering and design function by December 12, 2007. I think I would just add the clause, which deadline is hereby extended to September 12th of 08, which would give you the 9 months. Would
that be acceptable?
And then, Jerry, I guess that'll mean that when we get those plans, it'll tie 27th Avenue into the as-built of Oslo Road and 27th
Absolutely.
Avenue intersection.
That's my understanding.
Right. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense.
I need to amend my motion then.
Please.
I'll amend it accordingly.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second, accordingly.
Any other questions?
Wesley.
No, I just would, the good news is I think this is fixing to pass. I guess the bad news is we put the funds in coastal escrow.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Thank you, Wesley.
Thank you.
Put Teddy's dollar in coastal?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Will. Commissioners' items. Commissioner Wheeler, you have an item.
Yeah, I had two reasons for adding the mining to the on-site for extraction activity. First is I'd like Will to explain, because the editorial the other day in the newspaper about mining and about the Sexton Ranch and some of that was corrected today by the letter from Ralph Sexton, which I thought was well written. But he indicated in the editorial that they could start mining and so on and so forth, and that's not the case. And I think it was blatantly wrong in the editorial, and I'd like Will just to handle that end of it, and then I've got a different, the second part.
Will, can you take over?
Yeah, and I have to credit Roland DeBlois, because when I got in yesterday morning, he had already sent an email to the editor that pointed out that the sentence relating to the Sexton Ranch that said your tax dollars didn't purchase the mineral rights that Sextons could get in the mining business was incorrect. The agricultural conservation easements acquired by the county specifically prohibit mining. The only excavation is incidental to agricultural production, such as a stock watering pond, and that's limited to no more than 2 acres per year at one time. And the actual language from the agreement says that exploration for or development, storage, extraction of topsoil, except sod farming, sand, gravel, minerals, hydrocarbons on or from the property by any method is prohibited, provided that the grantor may remove sand and gravel, provided it's limited and localized and impacts no more than 2 acres per year, does not conflict with the conservation easement, and is reasonably necessary and incidental to carrying out the improvements in agricultural production use permitted on the property by this conservation easement, and it's outside of wetland and woodlands identified in a separate exhibit. So that was a complete misstatement of fact.
Will, for this information, excuse me, for this information you've just given us, would you request a clarification, correction from the Press Journal officially and write something?
I'd certainly be happy to.
Thank you.
Good point.
Good. Second part to this is and one of the other things, just to throw in, I've heard, and I don't know where I've heard it from, but that the Sexton Ranch was approached about using an easement. I've never heard that. Some people have mentioned that, and I've never heard that. I've also had conversations, as I'm sure everyone has, with Mr. Paladin about this mining operation, and he's made several suggestions. And as this moves forward to the 13th of December, it's my understanding from talking to Will that none of these things are binding because of the way that we do an administrative approval, if in fact they approve that. I would like to see our ordinance or give direction to staff to get an ordinance as quickly as possible about what we want to do. And I realize there's some very sensitive things that have to be addressed. And I hate to run into this, and therefore that's the reason the moratorium came up a few weeks ago. But I'd like to see us move forward with that and to somehow protect us if this is passed on December 13th. But I would like to see I'd like to see this removed from the 13th agenda, if possible, and I'd like to work on an ordinance that protects the county. A lot of things have changed in this county in the last 15, 20 years since we've done our comprehensive land use plan, and I would, I think it's important that we take a hard look at this, because this is going to have far-reaching and long-lasting consequences as we move forward with any of these projects.
I agree, and have given a report that I think you all have a copy of to the staff. The other thing is perhaps we need to have a workshop on this for the staff, or we need to look at this in depth a little bit. I'm open for suggestions, and I would like the attorney at this point to go over the process that we're involved in and how we might want to alter it.
Well, you've already initiated a process to schedule public hearings to adopt a moratorium on mining for a 6-month period. That public hearing process would begin in December and end in early January. So the moratorium would be in place by early January. If this proposed mining project went to the Planning Commission on the 13th, which is the only Planning Commission meeting, whatever the result of that, if there was a decision to approve or deny, that could be appealed to the County Commission. That appeal would not get to you until after the moratorium was in place, should you choose to adopt it, or however you choose to adopt it. But I think the effect would be if the mine was, say, denied and appeal was taken to you, and you ultimately determined to approve or uphold the appeal and approve the mine, then the approval would relate back to the time of the original decision that you would be overturning. Commissioner Wheeler spoke to me yesterday about the possibility of adopting a moratorium through the pending ordinance, and I don't think that's possible at all. The real purpose of a moratorium is to give you time to develop an ordinance and determine what your criteria should be and maintain the status quo while you're developing your best ideas as how to protect the community from incidental effects of mining. There was also some discussion about the real problem that's been pointed out in the last few meetings is the conflict of the truck traffic on the dirt road with the residents and the safety issues involved there. And if there was to be a pending ordinance, it would probably be better directed toward requiring paving improvements for any access road to connect to the nearest paved road. But I'm not sure that our ordinance doesn't have that requirement in it right now. If we have over 100 or 200 trips, there are certain requirements that the project paved to their access point. So depending on the traffic report that, as I understand it, is yet to be submitted, that may trigger some of those requirements in whatever goes to the Planning Commission on the 13th. If the information from the traffic isn't ready, then it's conceivable that the whole issue could be postponed until after the moratorium public hearings are held.
I didn't follow that.
It's confusing.
I mean, what I'd like to know is we can do better than what we're doing. There's no doubt. Now, we got a situation here in front of us where we have an application coming forward. And in that, I want to do better than what we're doing. I get a lot of calls from issues with mines in this area, and I can't imagine fielding more. I'm doing my best to put the fires out with the ones that are there now. And so I think we owe something to the residents, as well as the property owners somewhere. There's got to be some common sense that we can come down to move in a direction on this. And I don't know whether, I mean, if this one is before the moratorium, then I don't want to approve something that is right in line to keep on doing what we've been doing with the mines in the area. So I don't know how we do that, and I guess really that was what I was looking for out of Mr. Collins's comments.
Well, I guess the distinction may be the size of this mine, and I'll look to the planners and engineers to correct me because they review and apply these criteria, but our site plan criteria now speak to projects that generate more than 100 average daily trips are required to pave from the project's access point to a paved public road prior to the issuance of a CO for the project. It could be that some of the other mines that are operating out there were of a size that they didn't trip that paving threshold, but perhaps a larger project would.
Right.
I'm guessing at this point because the issue just came up this morning.
Well, one of the other problems, too, is right-of-way and having enough right-of-way to build a road. The other thing is, Will, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is if this goes forward, and I would imagine, based on emails and comments and things that we've probably all received, that regardless of where this goes at P&Z on the 13th, there's going to be an appeal. And the appeal would be taking place basically simultaneously or close to the moratorium.
Just after.
But if the moratorium was in effect, it wouldn't affect the appeal because that would be an under the wire, and we would base the decisions on that appeal based on the old ordinance before the moratorium. So the moratorium wouldn't really have a large effect on the mining operation as we know it today and what's being requested on the 13th. Is that correct? Or
I think that's correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
A question of Mr. Collins. It's obvious that local residents have well-founded concerns for safety, for health, and for lifestyle, and their voices are being heard. And most certainly, I'd like to know what other legal avenue we have at this juncture to address their concerns and issues in an immediacy. Is there one? Does such exist?
Well, I guess first I would need to know how you want to address their concerns. If there was some approach that you wanted to take that you felt would, we could invoke a pending ordinance. But as I said, the only thing, or the primary thing I've heard is not having a conflict between truck traffic and residential traffic on a dirt road. And the only way to correct that, I think, would be to pave the access road to local road standards at a minimum. And that may or may not be a requirement of our existing code. If it's not, you could give some direction to put a pending ordinance in place to require paving of any mine haul route to the nearest paved road, regardless of the size.
Well, could that apply to this
it
an existing project, or?
Yes, it could.
Let's
it can be grandfathered?
Stan?
No. I mean, if you want a grandfather, we just walk away and don't have this discussion. If you want to provide these protections, you invoke the pending ordinance and say, we're going to pass an ordinance that we know will require haul routes to be paved, and that's the pending ordinance until we bring it forward. Then this project would not be approvable unless it conformed to that paved road requirement.
Stan?
Yeah. Stan Bowling, Planning Director. What Will has pointed out is that we have a chapter 934 on mining projects that deals with road maintenance, and it anticipates that haul routes can be, and they have been in the past, off of unpaved roads. There's also a section in 952 that deals with paved road requirements for commercial and industrial developments, and that has certain trip thresholds in the ordinance. That to date has not been applied to mining operations. But I think the issue, and Will and I have had discussions on this, if our chapter on administrative permit uses, which is what applies here for mining, reasonable conditions can be attached by the Planning and Zoning Commission for scale, duration, and nature of the project. And it may be, as Will has pointed out, that if this mine, Wild Turkey, I'm going to use as the example here, in conjunction with other mines, if there's enough traffic on 82nd, that the P&Z may already have the authority to require a paved road. And I think that's the issue. And I think that the traffic report was actually logged in this morning, but I'm sure that the trip thresholds would be enough to trigger the requirement in 95208 that you were referring to earlier, Will. I think the question is, does the P&Z have the authority as an administrative permit use to go ahead and apply a paved road requirement?
In the event.
I think they're required to if it exceeds that traffic threshold.
What is the traffic threshold that I would like to...
100 or more average daily trips. And we've got, I think there's another requirement if it's over 200. I don't know exactly where that is. But this may be enough to avoid the need for a pending ordinance.
Right. And I think just to let you all know how it's been applied in the past, the distinction has been between site plans for what we would call permanent uses, a commercial or industrial building, and we have paved road requirements in 952, and that's the way that's been applied. Mining operations have been looked at as not permanent. In fact, we have a 10-year cap regardless of the size of the mine on mining activity for a mining operation. And that's why in the past, stabilized but unpaved roads have been allowed. But again, I think that, and this is an opinion from Will, but I think in Chapter 971, the administrative permit regulations could allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to require that if they make a finding about the amount of traffic being generated and the type of traffic being generated.
I think there's more here that needs to be looked at than just paved roads. That's a very small part of the entire problem, or potential problem, and so it's just not a single issue thing. There's many things to be considered with a project this size, and mining in general also, I might add.
And I think that we have the flavor of that from the community. They're wanting to know more and say more. And I'm going to open this up, if I have no objections, to anybody in the audience who would like to speak. Is that a problem?
No.
Okay. We're here for you, and we want to hear you. We'll start on this side. Name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Ralph Evans, 1420 Shorelands Drive, West Vero Beach. I'm an attorney. I'm a concerned citizen, and I represent the applicant who has a permit before you.
Which applicant?
Doesn't matter. The applicant is the entity that's applied for the mining permit at Wild Turkey. I'm going to bring a couple things to your attention. I'm not going to talk about my permit specifically, and that's what bothers me the most about what I've witnessed in 2 commission meetings I've been in and one I missed. We are an applicant who is entitled to a quasi-judicial process, and our permit is being discussed in the legislative process. I don't know how that's happened, but it concerns me. I know in the beginning a citizen who lives on 82nd Avenue, rightfully so, was concerned about the mining operations on 82nd, and our permit is also there, came before the county commission and expressed his concerns. The knee-jerk reaction was for a moratorium. The next time he came before the commission, he basically asked that, I thought, if I heard him correctly, that maybe a moratorium was a little bit much, but there was no legislative response. Now today, I'm only here because I heard about it indirectly, and staff, I think, knows that I'm involved in this permit. But I know that citizens of 82nd Avenue knew about it in advance, and the agenda did not reflect that this item would be up for discussion. I think it was changed when the meeting opened today. And I'm about procedure, and I'm about following the law, and I'm a little bit concerned about what's taking place here. Taking a note, I'll tell you, I've been involved in this property once before, many years ago, and the byline at that time was that people and cattle don't mix. And then the first thing I see in the editorial in the Press Journal was somehow mining and agricultural don't mix. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to that piece of property. Maybe it's just going to sit there, or maybe somebody's going to buy it. But I don't want to just talk about my permit. I don't want to talk about paving. I don't want to talk about any of that. I know what the LDRs require. I know we can meet those requirements, and that's resolved in a quasi-judicial process, and I suggest to you that's where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. Joseph Paladin. I'm the president of Black Swan Consulting and Entitlement, and I represent Wild Turkey. Let me make a couple general statements. As you all know, for the last 2 years or so, I've been very involved with pending ordinances and moratoriums in this county. Number one, as a little general information, a pending ordinance or a moratorium basically cannot be project specific. It has to address a general concern, a general overall consensus. Number two, to try and do a pending ordinance to be retroactive, that's not only against local law and state law and federal law. And furthermore, if you keep a project from going forward, that definition is defined as being retroactive. So having said that, the concerns that we can't attach these proposals we brought forth, which are 12 proposals actually now, and attach them to a permit, a specific permit. The attorney for Wild Turkey has assured us if that's what we want to do, we can make it legal and can make it binding. So this particular permit that you've elected and voted to be go forward on separate tracks, while the moratorium goes forward and while this permit goes forward, I believe that we legally can attach those proposals to that specific permit. Through the help of staff's wording and the help of legal, we would be happy to put that together and bring it to your legal and see if that would suit your legal department, that it could become legal binding. So therefore, you wouldn't be letting something slide through the tracks. And even though the pending ordinance or a moratorium wouldn't apply, we would still apply these proposals, which I think that are connected with the quality of life and going forward. We would make sure that these proposals were attached to that permit. And I think in our proposal a week or so ago, and with our discussions with staff, we've gone ahead and said that we are not in opposition of paving that road to improve it. You're not having to enforce it. We're voluntarily coming forth with that proposal. The only one of the proposals we took off the table was any sort of negotiation for a right-of-way. That was just a thought process, and it wasn't to go through Mr. Sexton's property. We never had that thought process. It was actually to go through GL Homes property just to the south of that property. They elected to not sell a right-of-way, and they elected to want to sell their whole piece of property, and that's not really financially feasible. So we won't be searching that avenue out. But the other 12 proposals, and as far as the last one even, to write BMPs for sand mining, that's huge. And in writing those BMPs, one of the stipulations that I bring forward is a written report to the county once a month by an inspector that we're doing things right and that the mining process is being done exactly the way we brought it forth. So not let something be escaped that, you know, after a while you have tons of acres tore up. I mean, under our current practice of only being able to mine 20 acres at a time, you could never have more than 20 acres under construction at one time before that original 20 acres was put back to satisfaction of the county. And the second 20 acres, you could only stack fill on that 20 acres. You couldn't start the second 20 acres, so that fill was dispersed throughout the development, wherever we plan to put it, specifically with berms and fill in other areas. So we're willing to let you write that up, or we'll write that up with our attorney and attach that to the permit that's going through, so you don't have to worry about that being under the wire. We're not trying to get in under the wire. We're trying to attach these things to our permit, but we're trying not to let you now come back and change what we voted on a couple weeks ago, that we had two separate tracks, that let the moratorium go forward. We'd be a part of looking at that, but let the permit go forward as long as we attach these provisions. A moratorium without provisions on it, without improvements, is better for the county and better for the people that live there. It does us no good. These people are going to live there more than 6 months or a year, or however long you think you can keep this moratorium in effect. It's what we have as a finished product for them to live there the rest of their lives. So I think that we've already decided this issue, and I'm voluntarily saying that we'll come forth in writing with these proposals to attach it to our permit. But I still would like to continue on the track that we decided to go on a couple weeks ago. If any questions, I'd like to be able to answer them later.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
My question is more of Mr. Collins or Mr. Bowling. Stan, you said that we could add at the P&Z level to the permit. But Will, what you're saying is the requirement for some of these issues in our it's not a part of the LDR, but you're having some concerns about how they would be enforceable?
Yes, sir. I mean, it may be that some of the things that are being proposed would be allowed conditions under our code, and some wouldn't. You know, we're doing this on the fly a little bit, and the project hasn't been analyzed, reviewed by the Planning Commission, certainly not by me. But I do have concerns about the enforceability of some of the things that Mr. Pallen's suggesting, like best management practices and reports. If they're not in our codes now, I'd feel better if Mr. Evans was giving me assurances that he'd looked at it and had a comfort level, and I am with Mr. Pallen playing lawyer.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions until I...
We're happy to make that proposal that I just brought forth as part of the package that we're submitting through the county right now. We'll have an attorney write it up so where we feel is legal and binding, and we will meet with your legal department in a partnership to make sure that they accept that. That's part of bringing this through, and we've talked to staff about getting the wording right so they're comfortable with the wording in the permitting process. So we're perfectly willing to proceed with writing up what we feel would be a legal and binding document to hold our feet to the fire on these proposals we brought forward. And you could probably use that as future agreements in your new ordinance or your new LDR. So there's no way that we would escape any of this through your LDR being simultaneously coming through at the same time.
May I just
Sure. You're not on my tab.
Well, since Will asked me to say something. Here's the problem I'm having with all this. We've come up here and made some points about that permit before. Somehow we got to the podium, somehow we discussed it, just like we're doing it today. This permit needs to be discussed in another channel. Now, it's clear to everyone in this room, I'm sure, that if it weren't for this permit application, these discussions wouldn't be going on at all. No one would wake up in the middle of the night and go, I wonder when they're going to start mining up the street. It wouldn't happen. Everything that we've said that we're willing to do, we are willing to do. But the place for that to be resolved is at P&Z in the quasi-judicial process. It's with staff. That's the trail we should be on. But we found ourselves now in this legislative arena discussing a quasi-judicial issue. That troubles me. It's not a candy store. We're willing to do a lot of things, but we can't make a deal with everyone. And we're willing to follow the LDRs, and my client has always said he'll pave the road. They don't want the road paved. I know that. We'll do whatever's next best. We're working to make this right for everyone. That's his commitment. But he is entitled to mine. And the only way you're going to stop that is the process you're doing right now, and it's directed at this permit. And I'm telling you that's wrong. So what what Joe has said before about the 10 or 12 items, whatever they are, we're willing to do all those things. We're willing to make that deal with this county about that mine. Thanks.
Do we have any comment at this point from our attorney?
I tend to agree with Mr. Evans. I think the whole issue is process and, more importantly, due process. There's a process set up where you apply, you proceed. If you meet the requirements, you get approvals. If you don't, you're denied. And we are, in even talking about a pending ordinance right now, proposing to legislate on the fly, and it's just not a good way to go. I think the moratorium will come before you that will maintain the status quo. This, if it's scheduled for P&Z in December, they will come to some determination, and if there can be assurances that everyone's comfortable with, fine. If not, it'll probably be appealed, and we'll just have to see where it goes.
Okay, continuing on with the audience. Name
Thank you.
and address, please.
My name is Helen Schaefer, and I've been here for 43 years. Don't really like to admit that, but I have.
And your address, please.
And I live at 69th Street, 6850 Carson's Trail on 69th Street. The issue that I have here is I have to agree that you're correct, that if, in fact, that we are here because of that permit. And in fact, that's my issue, is that I'm not understanding, I'm very confused at how that permit got approved in the first place. Because I have to, living in Indian River Farms, as I do, and really have to agree with the newspaper that what's the difference between agricultural and mining, and I think there is a difference in that, and I'd like to know how the P&Z defines that word agricultural and how they define mining. And I think there is a difference there, and that's why we live in Indian River Farms. And I also think that, as Chairman Wheeler mentioned, there are many more issues other than these proposed amendments and the things that we'll do to make safety rules and those kinds of things in that area. And many of those issues are things like it is up to our commission to protect our county. None of those proposed amendments will do anything for our county, and certainly nothing for our housing crunch that we're having right now, and certainly nothing for what's going on with the real estate or our taxes or any of the issues that we've discussed here today. And I think it is up to you folks to protect us, and I believe that you will. I see that on every turn, and I see that now. So I think that we're correct that we are here under the wrong pretense in dealing with this permit, but it's in fact a permit that should never have been permitted. And so I think those are the things we need to look at, and we need to take a strong stance on that and look at the P&Z and see what it is that they're permitting and see what's going on with that. What are those zoning definitions out there? And I appreciate you protecting us. I love this county. I've been here, like I said, for 43 years. I live in Indian River Farms, and that's my community, not a mining community. And I would hate to think of what's going to happen to our real estate if we do have that. And I think there are plenty of places for you guys to go west of 69th Street. So be it. I like to buy some property out there, and we can all get in the mining business. But I think there's plenty for everybody. I think there should definitely be some conflict resolution here. And I think that we are facing an issue that shouldn't even be an issue. Thank you. Thank you very much for protecting us.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, based on what Mrs. Schaefer said and what Ralph said and so on, back, I think this past summer, when we had problems with the mining and the road and the bridge, et cetera, I had conversation with Mr. Baird, and I'm sure others have too. And I think maybe this brought it to a head, but this isn't the only reason we're discussing this. We talked at the time about some of the things, and maybe we were a little late in bringing this to the table, but this started back with the situation we had this past summer, and looking at the possibility of ordinance and how we could create a better machine for sand mining and so on and so forth in the county. So it's not, in my mind, it's not just about this one operation. It's about sand mining in general across the counny.
Yes,
or mining in general.
Before this permit came out, we already had started the process, because when the two mines, went in effect on 82nd, we got so many complaints that the commission was starting to look at before Wild Turkey came along. I'd like to point out to the commission that we permitted the biggest mine we've ever permitted just a few months ago in South County, out by Oslo, and we have 2 pending permits in that area, so you're going to be in the same predicament. You've got the 2 additional permits in the process out near the Oslo mine, and they haven't started mining the mine out there, the first big mine, and there's 2 more also. So we're going to have this all over the community, and I think you may want to take that in consideration, because the Fisher mine out in Oslo hasn't started up yet, and we also have 2 other additional applicants right in that vicinity. So you're going to have the same problems.
And that's one of my big concerns we haven't really talked about, is the cumulative impact of multiple mines impacting a road. I mean, it's okay to say we're going to make one mine 200 trips, okay, but when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 mines on the same road, all of a sudden now we're at 1,000 trips. And, I think part of what we need to do here with this reviewing the ordinances is look at cumulative impacts and make the circle a little bit bigger of the impacts. And just like Joe said, in South County, 3 mines all of a sudden coming online at one time could have some big cumulative impacts. So that's another reason I think we need to look at all this in a bigger picture.
And a cumulative impact not only of the roads, but of the environment and everything involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. Pretty dear to me.
Name and address, please.
Jim Gooch. I live on 69th Street, west of 66th Avenue. First and foremost, I think the biggest problem that we have here is that it's been designed as an administrative permit. It cannot be an administrative permit. Our forefathers, when they first thought of this, we were going to dig a pit and bring some sand out of it, and that was fine. And now we're up to 820 acres. The one on Oslo Road, if you drive down 95 and look west, you can see that for miles as you drive down 95 to the west. And it's an administrative permit. You need to get away from this being an administrative permit. We, who on 69th Street, who have 400 trips times 2, 800 trips when it was busy on a road that cannot support that. And Joe knows, we've had many meetings about this in the past. You've had to replace one bridge early already. And they're saying that we'll be happy to pave 82nd Avenue. St. John's is not going to allow you to pave 82nd Avenue until you buy the property to the east of 82nd Avenue, so we don't have a problem with the canal. So they're going to pave something that isn't even, they can't pave it. It's not a road that they can pave at this point in time until St. John's Water Management District comes in and says, okay, we will allow you to do that. We have, in 2005, I believe that we had so many permits for houses at the time that your concurrency for roads, you were so concerned about that, you said all of these permits that have been issued, we're not going to allow them to build at this point in time until we figure out what we're going to do with these roads. We have the same thing happening with these mines. It is unconscionable for our future of this county to allow this to happen as an administrative permit. We need to be notified that it's happening. We need to have a forum on it. There needs to be workshops on it. It has got to stop. The quality of life in this county will be permanently affected by the permits that are upcoming, the permit that has already been. You can't allow this permit to happen. It is not what our founders thought of mining. It is rock mining, number one. It's not just a pit, it's rock mining, and that will leave this county. The dollars won't even stay in this county. It's unconscionable. I'm sorry, but you need to dig deep and understand what this means. If I leave the county tomorrow, I am still concerned. And I've been here since '79, moved to agricultural property because that's the lifestyle that we wanted. It already has been relatively destroyed by the 2 permits at the end of our road. I thank you. Please consider the future of this county. The good. You can imagine all the bad. People can imagine all the bad that can happen with this pit. Let's name the good things that will come out of 850 acres of mining by a piece of property that we just spent $12 million on to preserve, and now we're going to tear up 820 acres right next to 462 acres that we hope to preserve. Our thinking is flawed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good morning. I'm Linda Mitchell, 8340 65th Street in the Two Bridges Equestrian Community. And when you came back from break, you found, excuse me, 2 envelopes in front of you, and those were letters that I had planned on delivering to you in the future until I learned yesterday that this was going to be on the agenda today. I'm not going to take up everyone's time with the detail that is in that letter, but I'd just like to summarize the content and the intent of the letter. I'm very encouraged by the comments that I'm hearing from all of you. I feel like we do have your intention of listening and paying attention to the things that unfortunately were not recognized prior to the past 2 permits. And I think we are all here having been very frustrated over the last few months of hearing, especially from Mr. Baird, that it was too late, that there were things that could not be changed, that could not be stopped. And so we have come to compromise with what has been happening with the mines that are currently operating. And it has been better than it was before, and we do appreciate that, but still obviously would have preferred that they were not there at all. But in the letter, there are some personal effects that have affected us as horse owners, as property owners, as professionals. We serve on our farm children with disabilities who come out to see the horses and work with the horses. We also have a teen volunteer program, and we employ teenagers from the high schools working with our program. And we also have taken care of my elderly mother on the property. And some of the specific things that occurred for us were total inaccessibility to the property, danger in trying to access the property. When the bridge was being repaired, the mud, people being stuck, having to go out with the tractor. I mean, it goes on and on. But the hope from my letter and also from being here today is that you will really take the time to take a close look at what can be done legally to hopefully stop this mine from happening at all. And if that can't happen legally, to at least make sure that there are provisions in place that the law will be followed, because up to now it has been a battle and it has been back and forth, and temporary compliance with the regulations, and then all of a sudden a speeding truck, or the road not being taken care of after a storm and difficulty getting to and from. So again, it's just a very strong request that you will look at not just whether the road is paved or not, because that's obviously not the only issue. 69th Street is paved, but it has become much more dangerous. The bridge was inaccessible and had to be repaired on an emergency basis. It's not just the paving, it's all the other aspects of impact, economical, environmental, and just the rights of the citizens to have the property maintain the value that we expect it to maintain with all that we've put into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good morning. My name is Amy Banov. I also live on 69th Street. I think this is a compatibility issue. I'm here because I'm a neighbor of several of these mines and ones that are being proposed. The compatibility issue of ag lands with sand mining, as I understand it, the intent of the land use, including that, was that it was an incidental use in an ag environment. And if you take 820 acres and 20 acres per year and mine it, that's 41 years. That's not an incidental type mining use. That is a commercial activity of mining. As ag lands are changing in character, as our whole county is changing in character, some out of control and before our eyes without knowing how to stop it, we do need to take a look at what all those uses are. What are the citizens expecting you to do to protect the quality of life, both in residential as well as ag lands? I'm here today because this is in my backyard, but I'm also a taxpayer, and I know that when you bought the property to preserve it, the development rights and the conservation easements, you spent some of my money there too to preserve that. To see an 820-acre mine right next door to those pristine lands and the environmental damage that would be done to that property that you just bought is unconscionable, to use a word that was used today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Good morning. My name is Donald Simon. I live at 8080 24th Street, close to 82nd Avenue. First of all, I want to say that I appreciate the service that each one of you is doing for the county. I think it's not an easy job. And I think this county is headed in the right direction with the Florida Green Building Coalition. I see the passage of the Water Resources Development Act. I think these all make sense. The project on the mining operation seems not to make sense at all. Looking at the size and scope of the operation, if you look at that in what the rest of that area is up there, it doesn't make sense. So I'm asking you to do the right thing and protect us as taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Jens Tripson, 2525 14th Street, Vero Beach. I'm here representing Pelican Island Audubon Society today. I think you guys are in a little bit of between a rock and a hard place, because I don't think you can actually legally stop this particular permit today. I think it's going to probably have to go on to P&Z, and those of us in opposition will marshal our forces, and the people for it will marshal theirs. What I would like to address is the environmental issue, and having had experience with two mines that my family did, when we did the first one and with the dewatering system, we noticed immediately 3 veins that went out from, as soon as we started digging the pit, about a quarter of a mile in from each, through a quarter of a mile track where everything died. And when the second mine, when we opened it and got it going, I had the nursery in operation, and then I had to put a microjet irrigation system in because I didn't have groundwater anymore. It could rain and the next day the water was gone. And as we look at this over time, and Indian River County is going to be affected really, really quickly with where are we going to get water and what's happening to our groundwater. We're opening up more and more mines, which causes more evaporation, more water going into the drainage canals and out to the lagoon. We really need to address this. I think that's, we're going to have to figure out how to stop this project if we can, but the county is going to have to deal with it. The environmental issues of the dust, of the impact from the trucks, and we don't normally include human beings as environmental issue, but if it's affecting all of our ways of life, and especially the people that live in that area and work in that area, then that is, we are part of the environment. And we have to take that into consideration, that if their water is being affected, their houses are being covered with dust, the traffic considerations, we really need, I'd like to see you be able to stop this project today, but you're going to have to address it seriously for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Fran Denhart. I'm 2055 82nd Avenue, Ranchland Mobile Home Park. I'm here on behalf of all the residents in the mobile home park, which totals 108 lots. We are all opposed to this mining. We are taking up a petition which will be given to you all at the meeting on the 13th of December. We're not a gated community. We have 6 roads coming out from our community there. And in order to get out, you have to go on these roads to be able to get out to 82nd Avenue. Now, they're proposing about 200 trucks going in and 200 trucks coming down 82nd Avenue every day. I have driven up 82nd Avenue to see where this mining area is, and it's all dirt road. Now, I know they're all talking about paving the dirt road. Well, we're on the regular road, and we have got dust and dirt from all these trucks coming down there.
In the spring, it was quite a mess. You couldn't even open your windows. And this is not good for our environment. We have a lot of people, most of these people here in our park, they're all over 55 and over. A lot of them are in their 70s and 80s. And this is going to be a very big hardship on them. It also will devalue not only the property there on 82nd Avenue, but also the homes that are in there. Now, these are all mobile homes that I know they're not really expensive homes, but it's what people can afford. And I do think we have to look out for our citizens. I implore you that you think very seriously before you give this permit to the Wild Turkey Project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else over here?
Hello, my name is David Knight at 80 Royal Palm Point. It's the first time I've been able to talk up here. This is pretty nice. I would like to urge you today to consider a pending ordinance. I think that you're seeing a size, scope of mining operations that are not typical for our history in this county, were not contemplated in our codes, and are not wanted by most of our citizens, and don't belong in areas that they are allowed by administrative mechanisms in our current code. I think that whether or not it has an effect on current applications might be debated, I suppose. But I think if you're going to do something to strengthen a position, to preserve our environment, to preserve our character, to do what I think you want to do, it can't hurt to take action today in that direction. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Commissioners, I'm Honey Mendoza. I live in the city of Vero Beach. I'm also the president of the Indian River Neighborhood Association. We have a very firm position supporting these people who are against the mining going out there. You've heard very powerful and persuasive arguments here on behalf of the people, on behalf of the environment, and we certainly support those voices. But we recognize that this is a part of a much larger picture. Very clearly, you've made decisions on land development or non-development out there that you haven't kept pace with land development regulations, updating to that. And probably the most significant of that is the purchase of the easements on the Sexton Ranch. We find that it's absolutely incompatible putting a mining operation next to this ranch where we want to preserve it. And we feel that there's an obligation to protect that investment. Now is the time to do it by your land development regulations, by updating them. And any decision on mining before that's done really is very premature. I'd like to suggest that if you have an attorney on one side of the issue, there's going to be an attorney on the other side of the issue. And please seek that counsel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good morning. Congratulations on your new chairmanship there. Victor Knight, 3295 Ranch Road. I had a lot of props. I have a lot of pictures that I was going to share with you, but I think these heartfelt sharings that these folks have given you have maybe paint an accurate picture. I want to make a couple of clarifications, though. I feel like I need to defend myself. Mr. Evans said at the previous meeting that I thought that the moratorium was too strong and too much. That's not what I said. I applauded you for voting to bring a moratorium forward, but I suggested that we take a more targeted approach and specifically look at the lands east of I-95, where many of us have bought into this growth management idea that we were going to have low-density rural residential homes in an area where agriculture has just about long since gone. There's very few citrus groves still in that area. So,
we're way past due to be changing the land development regulations as they pertain to agriculture, and sometimes it takes something like this to bring it to a head. You all have been faced with, as previous commissions have been faced with, very difficult situations, and I don't want to be confused by just because we've done it in the past, this is the law and so forth. There's also a right and a wrong side to this issue. And clearly, if we have this kind of industrial activity out there, not unlike exactly what you got at Indrio Road, where really it isn't bothering anybody, but that's coquina rock mining. And that's what we're going to have there if this thing is allowed to go forward. Use your creativity to somehow find a way to prevent this. We really appreciate your deliberations on this, but you haven't shied away from tough issues before, and if we want to preserve the character of this county, we've got to take a tough stance again. And I really appreciate what y'all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I see one last person, maybe.
Thank you, Commissioners. David Cox, Periwinkle Lane, and congratulations. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. Sand mines are something I've supported in the past when I've been on planning and zoning. I've never been comfortable with them in the Ag 1 area, I'd have to say, especially as we've had increasing residential development in that area. I think that there are two issues I wanted to share. The first is the $12 million investment that the county has recently made in the Sexton Ranch. This is the crown jewel of ranches in Indian River County. This is the Adams Ranch of Indian River County. This is a major step for us to have preserved through conservation easements agricultural use on this land. It's a very, very big investment that the county has made. Taxpayers supported the last bond issue for environmental lands. I think it was 67%, I think, of the county voted for that. Their intentions are clear. This is an investment that representatives of that electorate decided to place here. So the future of our environmental lands program, the Land Acquisition Advisory Committee's deliberations, I think hinges on this. It's the impact, if you allow a major industrial activity next to that kind of an investment, is going to erode the public trust in these ongoing deliberations about environmental lands. Any ability to get environmental land money in the future, and I have to speak to that, I care about that, but our ability to go to the electorate and say, we're making wise decisions to protect your investments, is going to be shot if we put a major industrial operation that's going to take 10 to 20 years right next to something that we've just made a major investment in. And it's not sound public policy. I mean, you know, one way or the other. The other thing is, and I respect Ralph Evans and his, I understand this distinction between quasi-judicial and legislative, but ultimately, first principles of governance are that you are charged with the responsibility to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And if your ordinances are not in sync with the current status of things as they are right now, because they were passed 20 years or 30 years ago, you still have that obligation. You still have that obligation to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And it's not just the people who live on this road. It's everybody who has paid money into all of your budgets. But from my perspective, I'm really concerned about our ability to continue to protect agriculture, rural lands, and environmental lands in this, and cultural, historic lands in this county. And I think that our future ability to get support for those activities to protect the public interest will be eroded if this project goes forward. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we're running a little long here, but we're happy to hear everyone.
I'll be real quick. I called up my dad a couple of days ago, and I said, Dad, did you agree to sell right away to somebody so that there would be a mine behind us so that we'd have trucks crossing on our southern end?
Son, can you have your name?
Sean Sexton, 7880
And your dad's name?
37th
No.
Street. And he said, hell no, I didn't do that. He said, the whole reason we just did this was for peace and quiet. And so I think I kind of gave up on reading the paper lately. But anyway, he put a statement in there that I just have to come in and say my family, the way they feel about that is in that letter.
Thank you. Anyone else? One last time.
Again, Commissioners, Joseph Paladin, I'll be real brief. Look, I don't look at this as a sides issue. I look at it as all being on the same side because we all live here and all want what's best for the people in this county and the county. I truly believe that. That's truly our intent. Let me just give you a couple additional facts. The proposals we brought forward aren't operating within the law. It's so many levels and so many bars above the law that we want to add to the law to raise that bar of excellence in this county. And we believe by doing those things, it will improve the lifestyle along that road and be a safety issue that we can take care of at a big expense. We believe that the traffic operations, as far as the traffic officer being there, the paving of the road, all the other working hours to go with inside the ordinances we've already brought forward, we think those things are all important. As far as impact on the road, there's allowed 167 houses on that piece of property right now that can be built on that piece of property. If 167 houses were built on that property, you'd have a total trip count of 1,598. 200 trucks a day gives you a total trip count of 426. So we're taking everything in consideration we possibly can. And as far as that mining operation down in Rio Road, that doesn't in any way, shape, or form resemble what we're going to bring forward with our mining operation. We're limiting the height of the dirt we can stack. We're limiting the amount of acres we can mine at a time. We're limiting how we do our dewatering. We're going to keep water on site in our drainage ditches. We're designed a theory where the water will be put back into the aquifer almost simultaneously as we mine. And that's in our plans that we are being reviewed now. There's a lot of thought that went into this to try and do what's best for the environment. And I just ask you to go in the direction we said we're going to go, make these proposals part of any future mining, make these proposals attached to our permit, and we'll be happy in any way, shape, or form to assist you in that happening. We truly want that to happen. But let's go forward with what we voted on a few weeks ago and move this thing forward.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, Commissioner Wheeler, ex-Commissioner Chairman, this was your baby. What do you want to do here?
Well, I think that I'd like to see a pending ordinance on this. I think the question is Mr. Baird said, we have more permits pending. And I think we need to get a pending ordinance as quickly as possible from staff is to protect our interest and the interest of the county. And I think there's more questions than just paving or stacking dirt or whatever. I mean, there's areas, we look at health and welfare and safety of the county. The county has changed a great deal with population and a great deal with development. And, perhaps areas that were suitable for mining 15 years ago aren't suitable today. But I think these are things that need to be looked at. I kind of agree with Will. We're trying to hit this on the fly, and we're probably a little late in getting motion here, but we started talking about this. I know I did with Mr. Baird this summer, and I don't know that I could draw up the ordinance, but I think staff could, and I'd like to give them direction to move forward on this with the pending ordinance. Regardless of what happens with this mining operation, we need to address this problem because it's going to be ongoing.
Starting at the end, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is District 1, and there's the calls whenever it doesn't rain, the calls when it does rain, the calls whenever they start getting very busy, and then we have road issues, and everything that they're saying has legitimacy to it, and then on the flip side of that, I do understand what it's like to have property and where property rights should be balanced in this. The ordinance we have right now is not strong enough. It simply is not.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, first I'd like to just let everybody know that number is 1-800-CALL-WESLEY for
day and night.
Yeah, 24/7, any mining calls. In all seriousness, this, I think it's clear this has become a big issue for the entire county, and we do need to address it and address it as rapidly as possible. I support the future moratorium to give us time to come up with a comprehensive plan to address these issues. If we can impose a pending ordinance faster to make sure nothing else slips through, I'll support that as well. And I agree with what Commissioner Davis said. We do need to balance the rights of property owners, and I do support those rights. I think the proposed mine, and Madam Chair, I did look through the material you had gotten, and that's a whole different can of worms than what we're used to here. Whether it's hard rock or softer rock, it's a world of difference. So we do need time to let staff investigate this more and get more familiar with it and a better comfort level and address it. So if Commissioner Wheeler had made a motion there about a pending ordinance, I will support that. And
I'll make that motion.
Okay, let me continue on, though. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I share the same concerns. I don't believe that we have enough tools in the toolbox. I don't believe that we have enough strength and bite in what we need to accomplish. We're obviously going to be seeing more mining permits up the road, and we're most certainly going to be infringing upon others' rights or others' lifestyles, and most certainly their voices are being heard today, and they have been heard, and I appreciate the input as well. This is a large project, and I would like to see something addressed for the now instead of the future. I again have asked Will Collins, and I'll ask him again, what can we do for the people for today for this situation to address their needs and concerns? Whether they are addressable is not for today. Whether their concerns, I understand it's not all about roadways, it's not all about dust, it's not all about, it's a lot about a lot of things. And we need to ensure that they are addressable components. And I sincerely hope that they are, that we can all understand the symbiosis that we're looking to get and achieve. If it's achievable, if it's not, then it may not very well be. But again, what can we do for the here and now? And will this accomplish anything for today's discussion? That's truly my concern. If Will?
I don't think a motion for a pending ordinance means anything without some direction as to the content of that ordinance. You may recall the last time we had a pending ordinance.
We had direction.
We had an issue of people vesting concurrencies, particularly road concurrency. At that time, they were able to pay their impact fees and vest for concurrency anytime they wanted. You wanted to reserve the capacity for people who were actually developing, so that you said the pending ordinance is you can't vest by paying your impact fees until you're actually paying a building permit. We have nothing that concrete here in terms of direction. I think the staff told you when the first discussion of the moratorium came up that it would probably take 6 months to work through this comprehensive problem that Mr. O'Brien mentions. So I think it's going to be very difficult for the staff in a short period of time to come up with something that gets your sanction in the next couple of weeks without a little guidance as to what you want that ordinance to look like. And the only thing I ran up the flagpole was a paved road, which we may be able to do even without a pending ordinance, but that didn't get saluted by too many people, so I'm not sure what the ordinance would look like.
I agree with everything the commissioners have said and your concerns, but our first act of business, I do believe, is always for the health, safety, and welfare of this community, and period. And so, with that said,
get it done.
Get it done.
If I may, I'd like to address Will. I can give you a list of things, and a lot of them I think Mr. Paladin has already put in place, and some of the things I've heard. But roads, the size of the road, traffic, paving, berms, setbacks, all the things we've looked at in many of our ordinances, hours of operation, amount of trips per day, law enforcement to control in and out traffic.
Yeah,
I think
evaluation and compliance.
Yeah, and I think all of these things that have been on the table can be looked at. Also, areas of operation. Where are the best ways in this county, or the best places in this county for these things to occur? Maybe west of 95, maybe 10 miles west of 95. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want to see any operations between 82nd Avenue and 58th north of Oslo. There's many properties in there and ranches that's been pretty well developed. So I think that I think they've sat through 2 or 3 or 4 meetings, and I think they know where we're going. And I think that many of the things that Mr. Paladin has explained also, I think they're good ideas. I think the question there is the health, safety, and welfare. But I think that approach would be a good pending ordinance, because this isn't just about one mine right now. This is about the entire county, and I think all these things are important as we become more and more urban. And
to go along with that, and I don't know how much of a jump we want to take in this process, but I think that clearly you've got the concerns about the mines that is coming online. But I'm here to tell you the mines that are out there right now have been real also. And I don't know, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother planning and zoning meeting, but I can tell you, raise your hand if it's the case out there, you know what I'm talking about. And so, and that has nothing to do with the one that's in front of us either, hypothetically, on December 13th.
And one other thing I think was brought up today that I think is important if we're going to do a pending ordinance, and that I don't think these should be administrative approval. It's not like it was 20 years ago. Today it's different. We live in a different environment, more people, more rules, more regulations, and I think this should be public hearings when we do these mine permits and operations, and shouldn't be administrative.
And public notification.
Yes.
I'd like to mention one of the problems we do here when we did meet with the people, and I think it's very important. I don't think you can address through the pending ordinances that can't. I just asked, can it be an administrative approval? I think you're looking at a short-term solution here, a long-term solution, and also ongoing monitoring. And when we dealt with the people out there, the first thing they said to us was, no one told us, because this is administrative approval. We didn't get any notification. No one told us, and you've changed our quality of life. So that's one of the decisions you're going to have to make on a long-term perspective. The other thing is when you deal with the roads is when you get one mine, you've got 200, or you get 2 or 3 mines in that area, we usually talk about peak trips. But this, we're talking average trips. And there's also the combination when you've got one and then the other, and they all get done separately. I think that you're going to have to look at long-term on traffic studies and what triggers a whole paved road, turn lanes, things like that, as well as safety. And the thing we're running into right now, which I'm very involved in, is the ongoing, the policing of the ongoing facility. You know, should we have more ordinances which say, or more requirements that we have to oversee on mines? I mean, it goes from, we've talked, from people being stuck to, and then when it's dry, it's dust, and all those different conditions. So I think you get three things: a short-term solution, a long-term solution, and ongoing policing of the mines. And we need to look at all of them. I think you're going to have this very problem in South County. When I look at the two that we haven't discussed, we've got the big one that's going to open up, and we've got two more applications in that area. So the exact thing that we've got going right now in North County, we're going to have going in a couple of years in South County. So we need to get on top of it because we're going to have the same situation.
I think we all agree.
Madam Chairwoman?
Get on top of it is how.
Is a motion necessary, or just to tell staff, get working on it?
Stan?
Staff has a question.
Yes.
I think, there are really two levels of pending ordinance regulations that have been discussed. One is the impacts, paving the road, dust, enforcement, and so forth, notice. Those I think would be pretty easy to come up with, at least for something pretty quick. But I think it's a whole other level for an ordinance if it involves where these are going to be allowed, the bigger picture question.
Yeah.
If it's not going to be allowed where you have a real potential or existing ranchettes, 5 and 10 acre parcels, then you're talking about the only places this would go would be west of 98th Avenue, anywhere in the county, and south of where Fellsmere currently is. And my question is, for the pending ordinance, is that level of where, and that kind of restriction of what you all are looking for in the pending ordinance, or are we only looking at kind of the impacts that we've talked about, the paved roads, the dust, the notice, that sort of thing?
I'll chime in on this. There's clearly spots of 1 unit per 5 where this would be fine. I look at it, and I think the issue here is where the traffic is going to and coming from. If this is 1 unit per 5 on the south side of 510, in an area like Graves Brothers or something along that, to me, that would probably be a little more palatable on a 4-lane highway. Now, whether or not we want to start micromanaging it down to the point, if the county's not maintaining the road, I don't see it as being an issue if somebody tears it up. But whenever you have the public that is kind of depending on a road that the county maintains, then you have, that as a major haul route to the point that people are getting stuck. It's time for us to do something about that.
Well, I think, too, something Jen's brought up that I certainly don't understand. I'm not a scientist, but, when you start dewatering and doing things like that, what does that do to surrounding wells and landscaping and properties that are already there? And I think we need to know more about that as to how far away would they have to be from properties and wells to do a land?
And it's the type of dewatering and the type of mining that we need to consider, and the ramifications of it. You can't destroy somebody.
Right.
And that's what happens, yes, sometimes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one more thought. Inasmuch as you appoint the Planning and Zoning Commission, they're listening today, and they're hearing a certain consensus, as we are, and we're very appreciative of, this creative process. Inasmuch as they are listening, and I worry about the teeth that such an ordinance might have, and the ability to stop the wild turkey project. That's what we need to be able to do, and if you maybe a unanimous resolution to send that message to P&Z, because I fear that if they come in there and they dot their I's and cross their T's, then they've got a permit and we're done. Am I wrong?
My understanding is, Victor, and I, from talking to Will and everything, what I assume will happen, this will go to P&Z on the 13th, and regardless of the outcome, I assume there'll be appeal to the Board of County Commissioners. I would assume that would be on the on health, safety, and welfare, and looking at it in that perspective. That's my assumption.
Yeah.
I think that if the project is approved, I would assume that probably the group that's here today would appeal that, and if it's not approved, I would assume the landowner would appeal it. So I think it'll end up back here eventually. I don't think, from listening and from what Ralph said and from what our attorney says, I don't know that there is any way to stop the process as to where it is now. But I think that the appeal process can work, and during that period of time, if we can get a pending ordinance moving ahead or a moratorium, the same thing happened to us during the big rush where we over-inventoried single-family homes. We're trying to play catch-up and hit it on the fly and not taking time to set back and look at all the details. As they say, the devil's in the details. So that's what I think is happening, and I think the positive thing that's occurred here in the last few weeks is the fact that it's definitely realized, from what I'm hearing by this commission, that we have a problem that needs to be addressed and addressed quickly.
I don't know if it was offered as an alternative, but I would be delighted to have the 1 to 5 unit ratio of residences take occupancy on that land as an alternative to this, and that can be an option for the South Dakota landowner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so where do we want to end this?
Well, I'll make a motion that we move forward and have staff bring something back, I guess, on a pending ordinance, and let's start the process and quit the talking.
Second that.
Okay, and to give specific direction to staff.
I think he's got my notes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
why I'm writing everything down I said.
Okay, you have our phone number, don't you? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. We need a short break, but we only have a few items
I think we
left.
need that in
I
2
think we
minutes.
can do it in 2 minutes. I can do mine in a minute and a half, less than a half a minute.
Yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge, we received a plaque, the county commission did, senior
We'll take 5 minutes so they can clear the room.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes.
Can't say that. I know.
Order. We just have a few more items, and I did want to acknowledge that the Senior Resource Association gave us a plaque, Commissioners, that we will hang in our office. It says, "The Senior Resource Association gratefully acknowledges the generous commitment of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners to Meals on Wheels, November 2007.
Great. Thank you.
And Commissioner, along those lines, so the audience knows, I believe Friday night at 3:30, the Senior Resource Association is unveiling their new logo for at the downtown Friday. So just to
Yes, and I plan to be there. Hope to see the rest of you.
Exactly.
If you're in town.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we'll be going on to the playoff game later, but we'll be there.
That's right. Yes.
And then you've got the Florida State game this weekend.
Oh my gosh, we're going to be busy, Commissioner.
And it's hunting season.
And hunting season.
Day after
Holy
Thanksgiving.
Gosh.
Check along with the pointy end.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Commissioners, I had the opportunity to receive a letter from the Indian River County Historical Society, and wanted to, they were requesting a letter from me, and obviously I will do that, or have done that, but I think also with what they're requesting here and the importance of it, I'd like one, if we could, on behalf of the Commission. It's, you see the back up there. If there's any objections, that's fine. If not, I'd like to direct staff to draft a letter in support of this.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Passes. And that's it. Meeting adjourned.
I had mine.
Oh, sorry.
That's right, Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank
Peter.
You. Yes, Madam Chair. This is just a quick update. In the backup is a memo from our lobbyist in Tallahassee, Ron Book, about the pending appeal of the St. Johns River Water Management land swap with the Corrigan family. We don't know the actual date of the appeal, but several of the possible dates are December 4th. And we've already voted to authorize commission and staff travel. And I guess I just want to let you know, since we don't have another meeting before the 4th, if that's the date, I guess I'm just asking for an excused absence, because I will be attending that appeal process. So just kind of a heads up. It may be put off until January, but if it's the 4th, I will not be at the 4th County Commission meeting.
Great, and good luck.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And that's all I have.
No further business. Happy Thanksgiving, and we are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Wonderful.